I was in the middle of my career's rise. Busy day and night without a break. But my wife not only showed no understanding, but also had big arguments with me, threatening to divorce me even if it meant leaving with nothing. However, she stubbornly refused to reveal the reason. I thought she must have had an affair, so I angrily agreed to the divorce. It wasn't until I finally achieved success in my career and attended a company celebration banquet that I heard colleagues mention my ex-wife. They said they saw her in a rundown neighborhood, not only alone but looking in terrible condition. I had planned to never speak to her again, but for some reason, I instinctively went to the place where she was living. Don't get me wrong, I just wanted to confirm if she really was doing badly after cheating on me and laugh at how blind she was to abandon me. But when we actually met, and I saw her condition, I was shocked to realize that her leaving me wasn't because of an affair. The reason was even more serious than an affair. Chapter 1. I had just finished a dinner meeting, and my head was still buzzing from the alcohol and noise. The deal had been sealed, and a few of my friends are ecstatic, planning the next round. I waved my hand, feeling done in. I just couldn't handle it anymore, my stomach burning with discomfort. The driver dropped me off downstairs. I looked up at my apartment window, which was dark like a deep well. Oh great, another night of battling with the cold, empty air on my own. I opened the door, found the switch, and, click, the light came on. The apartment was spacious. When I first bought it, I thought I'd arrived at the perfect place. But now, it just felt empty. Next to the shoe rack were only a few pairs of shoes, and the hallway was so clean it could reflect my tired face. Nice, I guess. At least it saved me from cleaning. I threw my coat on the couch and was about to get a glass of water when I noticed the water dispenser wasn't on. Forget it. I was too lazy to wait. The silence in the house was terrifying, like I could even hear the dust falling. For some reason, I found myself stumbling toward the balcony, thinking I might get some fresh air to sober up, and then I saw it. The golden pothos that Willow had left behind. When we divorced, she cleaned up so thoroughly that not even a strand of hair was left behind, as if she was afraid I'd get sentimental over something. But she ended up leaving this dying golden pothos behind. Or maybe she just never intended to take it. I'd almost forgotten what it used to look like. Now, it was in a pretty miserable state. Its leaves were yellow and drooping, the edges scorched, and the soil in the pot was cracked and dry, looking like it could die at any moment. It was just sitting there in the corner, blending in with the emptiness of the place. Suddenly, my heart lurched, as if something had tightly twisted it. I had an unexpected craving for a cigarette. I pulled out a crumpled pack, shook one out, lit it, and took a long drag. Forget quitting. This was still the thing that worked. The smoke stung my lungs, sharp, but it seemed to push down that strange irritability, just a little. Looking at the pitiful golden pothos, I remembered a few days ago when David and I had lunch. He hesitated, then said, "George, I think I saw Willow the other day." I had been busy replying to work messages and didn't even look up, just muttering, He continued, "She was in the old part of town." She looked tired, carrying a big bag, like she was living in one of those old buildings. What did I say back then? Probably something like, "Why should I care? It's all over now." We'd broken up completely, cleanly, and I thought it was for the best. That's what I always believed. But now, looking at that neglected golden pothos, remembering David's words, a fire flared up inside me, mixed with something else, something I couldn't put into words, suffocating me. Wasn't she so adamant about leaving? Didn't she want to go so badly? Didn't she refuse even a penny? How did she end up like David said? This golden pothos wouldn't survive without water. Was she alone in that rundown place, struggling too? The cigarette burned my fingers, snapping me back to reality. Fuck, I had to find her, right now. Chapter 2. I leaned against the cold balcony railing, not even noticing that the cigarette in my hand was almost burned down to the filter. One thought kept buzzing in my mind: I have to find Willow. But where should I look? Since the day of the divorce, I had deleted all her contact information, her phone number, WeChat, even that crappy app she used to write down recipes. At the time, I thought it was cool, cutting ties with the past and starting fresh. Now I realize I was just being an idiot. David. Yeah, David seemed to know something. I pulled out my phone, and after swiping through my contacts for a while, I finally found him. The phone rang a few times before he picked up, the background noise loud as hell. Probably at some party. "Hello, George, what's up? Did the celebration banquet change location?" David shouted over the noise. "No, I need to ask you something." I paused, feeling my throat dry. "You said you saw Willow last time. Where did you see her?" There was a brief silence on the other end, and the music seemed to quiet down. He must have moved to a quieter spot. George, why are you suddenly asking about this? Quit messing around. Just tell me where you saw her." My tone was sharper than I intended. I couldn't control it. David hesitated. "Well, it was in the west side of the city, but I can't remember the exact street. It was an old neighborhood, and there was a pancake stall at the entrance. "George, are you sure you're okay?" "Got it, thanks, bye." I didn't wait for him to say more and hung up. West Side. Old neighborhood. Pancake stall. This range was way too damn broad. I rubbed my head in frustration. The next day at work, I felt like I was floating. During the meeting, I couldn't focus on a single word the project manager said. All I could think about was that dying golden pothos and David's words. She looked really tired. By the afternoon, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I made up an excuse to sneak out of the office and drove straight to the west side. That whole area was full of old buildings, peeling walls, and messy wires. The streets were lined with small shops, and the air was filled with the smell of oil and a vaguely old, musty scent. It felt like a completely different world from my clean, cold, and lifeless neighborhood. I slowed down, scanning each building like I was using a scanner. I did see a few pancake stalls, but there were just too many of them. I couldn't possibly stop and ask, "Hey, have you seen a woman named Willow? She's pale, kind of skinny, and might look a little off." They'd think I was crazy. I wandered around that area for almost an hour, finding nothing. I felt ridiculous, like a headless chicken. Maybe David had mistaken it, or maybe Willow didn't even live here. She might have already left the city and was doing fine. A sinking feeling took over me, and I was about to turn back. Just as I was waiting at a red light, I subconsciously glanced at the entrance of an old neighborhood, and in that moment, I froze. A woman in a gray coat was walking out of the neighborhood, head down, carrying a large canvas bag that looked heavy, making her shoulder sag under its weight. She had lost so much weight. From the side, her chin looked sharp, and in the dim light of the street lamps, her face appeared pale, devoid of color. It was Willow. There was no mistaking it. She walked to the curb, set the heavy bag down, took a small breath, and looked around, like she was waiting for a ride. When her gaze briefly passed over my direction, it didn't linger. Her eyes were empty. My heart pounded like a drum, and my palms were sweating. Almost instinctively, I jerked the steering wheel, swerving into a quieter side road, almost scraping the trash can next to me. I stopped the car and leaned over the steering wheel, panting like I had just run a 3,000-meter race. Damn, I really found her. She's living in a place like this. What's in that canvas bag? It looked so heavy. She really did look like what David said. Exhausted, not physically, but a kind of deep, all-encompassing fatigue. I sat in the car, too scared to get out, not knowing what I'd even say if I did. Question her about why she was living like this. What right do I have? "Hey, ex-wife, seems like you're not doing so well after leaving me." I just couldn't bring myself to say that. So I stayed there, just watching her from a distance through the car window. She stood by the road, the evening breeze ruffling her dry hair. She shrank her neck, pulling up the collar of her coat a little more. A few minutes later, a rundown van pulled up in front of her. She struggled to lift the heavy bag into the vehicle, then climbed in herself. The van sputtered black smoke and drove off. I started the car and followed it at a distance. I knew it was messed up, like I was stalking her, but I couldn't help it. I needed to know where she was going, what she was doing. The van drove for about 10 minutes before stopping at a place that looked like the back entrance of a wholesale market. Willow got out of the van, said something to the driver, and then stumbled towards a low building beside the market, dragging the heavy bag with her. There was a sign on the door, and I could barely make out the words XX Clothing Processing. I watched her frail figure disappear into the doorway, and the strange, unnameable anger inside me faded completely, replaced by a sour, blocked feeling. So, that big bag. Was it clothes? Was she working here, doing physical labor? I sat in the car, lit a cigarette, but didn't smoke it. I just watched it burn slowly. So, she doesn't want a house, doesn't want money, and would rather come to a place like this to carry heavy bags. Willow, what the hell are you doing? Is it just for that ridiculous sense of pride, or do you really not want anything to do with me ever again? The cigarette burned down to my fingers. I threw the butt out the window, started the car. I had to figure something out. I couldn't just rush in. With her stubborn temper, if I went there now, she'd probably throw that whole bag of clothes right in my face. Chapter 3. I parked outside that shabby processing place for a long time, until it was completely dark, and a few lights flickered on inside the building. My mind was in a mess, like a ball of tangled thread. Should I just rush in? No, I can't. I know Willow's temper. Once she gets stubborn, not even 10 oxen could drag her back. If I just barged in like this, she'd probably hit me with a sewing machine right on the spot. I had to think of a plan, one that she could accept. For the next few days, I acted like a creep and figured out her routine. She left home around 7:30 every morning, walked 10 minutes to the bus stop, and took 5 stops to get to that clothing processing place. Her off hours weren't fixed. Sometimes she got off work at 7 or 8, other times even later. She always dragged that heavy, seemingly dead canvas bag with her. The old neighborhood she lived in was called Jianchashinsuan, which had a very nostalgic ring to it. While she was out during the day, I snuck in to take a look. The condition was even worse than it looked from the outside. The hallway was filled with junk, and the walls were plastered with small ads. The building she lived in was particularly old. I found an old man sitting downstairs, lazily fanning himself, and handed him a good cigarette. "Old man, I'm asking about something. Is there a rental apartment in this unit?" The old man squinted as he took the cigarette, pinning it behind his ear. "Rental. It's in high demand. This place is cheap. That's all. Haven't heard of anyone moving out." I felt a bit uneasy but continued asking. "Then, are the people living here all long-term residents?" "Mostly. Yeah. Oh, by the way, that girl on the 3rd floor, she seems to be renting." The old man pointed with his lips. "She just moved in not long ago. Skinny and quiet. She lives alone." "Yep. Young people these days, they have it tough." The old man kept talking. From him, I gathered a few bits of information. Willow was renting a small room, and the landlord seemed to be a difficult person, recently complaining about raising the rent. Raising the rent, that got my attention. A couple of days later, I asked a trusted buddy of mine to dress up a bit more presentably and pretend to be a real estate agent, to knock on Willow's landlord's door. When he came back, he was visibly frustrated. "George, your ex-wife, sigh. The landlord lady is no joke. She talks a lot. She says the girl's easy to push around. Rents go up without a word, and she doesn't even dare to complain. She also said Willow seems to cry sometimes at night, or something, making some noise, and she thinks it's bad luck." I lit a cigarette, flicking the lighter on and off. "How much is the rent?" "Just that crappy room, $1,200 a month, and she wants to raise it to $1,500. That's highway robbery." I did the math in my head. How much could Willow possibly make working at that small processing plant? Maybe $3,000 to $4,000 at best. After rent and food, what would she have left? "Can you do me a favor?" I put out the cigarette. "Go to the landlord, and in your name, offer her to rent my small apartment for cheaper. Just say the owner's out of town long term, and I need to rent it fast, so the price is negotiable." My small apartment wasn't far from here. It was old, but 100 times better than this Shinsuin place. The key thing was that it was safe and clean. My buddy paused. "George, what are you trying to do here? Why not just give her the money?" "She won't take it." I shook my head. I knew her too well. Just giving her money would be like slapping her in the face. "Just do it as I said. Don't mention me." The plan sounded perfect. I felt like a behind-the-scenes hero, quietly setting everything up for her. The next day, my buddy called me, sounding frustrated. "George, I ran into a brick wall. I went to talk to your ex-wife. I said everything. Promised the rent would be only $1,000. No deposit." At first, she didn't say anything, just listened quietly, then asked me. "Asked you what?" She asked. "Did George send you?" I froze. Of course. I said no. I told her I was just an agent. Then she laughed in a way that made me feel kinda creeped out. My buddy sounded uneasy as he continued. She said, "Thanks, but no thanks. I'm fine here." George, how did she know? And then she slammed the door. I hung up the phone, feeling a mix of emotions I couldn't quite put into words. She figured it out right away. Of course, who'd believe something like falling into a pile of money from the sky? And maybe she could still sense me. The roundabout tactic had failed. I was out of ideas. A few more days passed, and after working late, I found myself, almost without thinking, driving near Jinsha Shinsuin again. The weather was cooling as autumn approached, and the evening breeze was crisp. I parked in the usual spot and looked at her building from a distance. The lights were on. She was home. Just then, I saw a figure stumbling out of the neighborhood gate. It was Willow. She was wearing a thin nightgown and slippers, with a loose jacket thrown over it. Her hair was disheveled, and under the streetlights, her face was shockingly pale. She looked frantic, as if she didn't know where to go. She was walking fast, glancing around like she was looking for something. What was happening? My heart tightened, and before I could think, I opened the car door and rushed toward her. "Willow." She stopped abruptly, turning around to see me. Her expression was momentarily confused, then quickly shifted to panic and helplessness. She was clutching something tightly in her hand. "What happened? What's going on?" I ran up to her, slightly out of breath. She looked at me, her lips trembling, unable to get the words out. "Mandarin, my cat ran out. I can't find it." She opened her hand, revealing a small handful of cat food. Her eyes were red, and her voice cracked with tears. Only then did I realize why she was so panicked. Her cat had run away. She had rushed downstairs in her pajamas and slippers. Don't worry. What does it look like? When did it run out? Which direction did it go?" I tried to keep my voice calm. "It's an orange cat with a little white spot on its neck," she was rambling. "I just opened the door to get the takeaway, and it ran right out. I can't find it. What should I do?" Finally, tears streamed down her face, falling in big drops onto her cold hands. Looking at her, I felt like my heart was being pierced by 1,000 needles. The Willow I used to know, the one who couldn't even open a bottle cap and had a bit of a cleanliness obsession, was now crying in the cold wind in her pajamas. All because of a lost cat. It's okay. I'll help you find it. It's probably nearby. It won't run far. I took off my coat, wanting to put it on her. She instinctively stepped back. My hand froze in midair. The atmosphere became awkward. She sniffled, wiped her face roughly, avoiding my gaze. Her voice so quiet it was almost a whisper. No, thank you. I'll find it myself. After saying that, she turned around, walking along the roadside, calling the cat's name softly, Mandarin, Mandarin. I looked at her frail figure, my heart aching, a mixture of sorrow and frustration swelling inside me. Damn it. I pulled out my phone, turned on the flashlight, and followed her. I'll help you look. It'll be faster with two of us. My tone was firm, not allowing her to refuse. Start looking here. You go check the bushes over there. Chapter 4. That night, the wind felt like little knives, cutting at your face with every gust. Willow was wearing that thin nightgown, shivering as she moved through the shrubs, her voice trembling as she called for that damn cat. I couldn't watch anymore. This wasn't looking for a cat, this was self-torture. Get back in the car and wait. I grabbed her arm. It was freezing. This way won't work. The wind's too strong. It probably scared it, and it's hiding somewhere. Let me go look. You're just getting in the way. She tried to pull away, but probably because she was freezing or maybe panicking. She didn't have much strength. I pushed her towards my car. Get in. Turn on the heat. I'll bring it to you when I find it. She didn't argue, just gave me a vacant look, wrapped up in my coat, and trudged back towards the car, stumbling with each step. I sighed in relief. Damn. This was more exhausting than negotiating a multi-million-dollar contract. I turned on my phone's flashlight and carefully searched around the base of her building. Under the car, behind the trash cans, beside the piles of junk, checking every corner. I was swearing at that damn cat under my breath, but also worried that I wouldn't find it. Willow's condition, I couldn't even imagine. After nearly half an hour, covered in dust, almost ready to give up and post a missing cat flyer tomorrow, I finally spotted two little glowing green lights behind a broken heating pipe. A dirty orange cat was huddled at the back, watching me warily, and sure enough, there was a small patch of white fur on its neck. This size, it didn't really seem like Mandarin. Mandarin. I tried calling out, but even I felt weird saying it, muttering under my breath, "Are you sure it's not Big Orange?" It seemed to hear me and hissed, baring its teeth, making a threatening growl. Great. Guess it doesn't like being called fat. Still a tough one. I crouched down, trying to seem non-threatening. I pulled out the few pieces of cat food that Willow had dropped earlier and carefully offered it. The cat sniffed it but didn't eat, though it didn't seem as hostile. I slowly extended my hand, and it backed away, but the hole in the pipe was small. I seized the opportunity and grabbed it by the scruff of its neck, pulling it out. It howled, kicking its legs around, leaving a few red marks on my hand. "You ungrateful little thing. I'm saving you and you're scratching me," I muttered, holding the squirming ball of fur as I made my way back to the car. Willow was leaning by the window, staring anxiously. When she saw the cat, she immediately opened the door and rushed out. Mandarin. She almost ripped the cat from my hands, clutching it tightly to her chest, burying her face in its dirty fur, her shoulders trembling. The cat, once in her arms, calmed down, no longer mewing, but rubbing its chin against hers. I stood there, watching them, her and the cat, feeling the sharp pain on the back of my hand. The wind was colder now. She held onto the cat for a long time before finally looking up. Her eyes and nose were red. "Thank you," her voice was hoarse. "It's nothing." I shook my hand and said, "Just a scratch. Nothing serious." She finally noticed the blood on my hand, looking at me in surprise before her eyes softened with a complicated expression. "I'm sorry." I cut her off. "Hurry up and go inside. You're barely dressed. Don't get sick. The cat's found. Go back now." She stayed where she was, holding the cat, staring at me, then looking at the dark hallway, hesitating for a moment. "Do you want to come up and clean your wound? It's better to treat it, in case it gets infected," she said quickly, her voice almost swallowed by the wind. I froze. I never expected her to offer. The hallway was no better than outside. It reeked of mold and the musty smell of old buildings. The motion sensor lights flickered on and off, casting a dim glow on the faded marks on the walls. She lived on the 3rd floor and pulled out a key to open a rusty iron door. Inside was a narrow hallway cluttered with shoe racks and miscellaneous items from several households. She walked to the farthest door and unlocked it. As soon as the door opened, a strong smell of medicine mixed with the scent of cat litter rushed out. The room was small. You could see the far wall with just one glance. A single bed, a simple cloth wardrobe, and a small table piled with some clutter and half-eaten pills. In the corner, there was a cat food bowl and a water dish. The window was shut, but the cold wind still managed to sneak through. The place was relatively clean, but it couldn't hide the cramped and impoverished feel. She seemed a bit uncomfortable, placing the cat down and quickly picking up some clothes from the couch. You sit down. I'll get the first aid kit. The so-called first aid kit was just a biscuit tin, with a few band-aids, iodine, and cotton swabs. She took out the iodine and a cotton swab, standing in front of me, looking a bit uncertain. Your hand. I extended my hand. She cautiously dipped the swab in iodine and wiped my wound. She kept her head down, focused, and I could feel her breath lightly brushing over my hand. I noticed her fingers were cold, still slightly trembling. No one spoke. The only sound was the purring of the orange cat, rubbing against my feet. My throat felt dry, and I broke the silence. You live in a place like this? Her hands paused for a moment, but she didn't lift her head. Yeah, it's good. Cheap. Is the work at the processing plant tiring? It's fine. Her voice was quieter now. Why? I couldn't hold it in anymore, and finally asked, why would you rather carry heavy loads here than accept my help, then lower your guard? Her hand stopped moving. It took several seconds before she slowly looked up at me. Her eyes were watery, but there was more exhaustion, an overwhelming numbness that spoke louder than any emotion. George. Her voice was soft, but it felt like a hammer smashing into my chest. We're divorced. My life. It has nothing to do with you anymore. She tossed the cotton swab into the trash, closed the iodine bottle. Medicine's done. You should go now. Great. Back to square one. I had just started to feel a little softening, and then with one sentence, she slammed the door shut again. I looked at her, looked at the cold little room, looked at the pile of pills on the table. That burning anger flared up again inside me, but this time, it wasn't at her, it was at myself, at this damn life. I suddenly stood up. She jumped back a little, her eyes flashing with a hint of caution and fear. That look hit me like a bucket of cold water, snapping me awake. What was I doing? Forcing her? I took a deep breath, pushing the emotions down. All right, I'll go. I walked to the door and pulled it open. The cold wind rushed in. I paused for a moment, without turning back. Take care of the cat. If it runs away again, you might not be able to find it. After saying that, I shut the door, leaving the heavy smell of medicine and the suffocating atmosphere behind me. The hallway was pitch black. The motion sensor light didn't turn on. I stood there for a while, not moving. The spot where the iodine had touched my hand felt cool. Chapter 5. Going down the stairs felt like my feet were weighted with lead. The musty smell in the hallway seemed to have clung to my clothes, and no matter how I moved, I couldn't shake it off. That line, "It's none of your business anymore," kept playing in my head, paired with the emptiness in her eyes. Damn, I cursed under my breath, unsure who I was even cursing at. Back in the car, I didn't drive off right away. I just stared at the window on the third floor, the light still on, a dim yellow glow. What's she doing now? Staring at that damn cat, or just zoning out at that pile of pills again? When she was wiping my wound earlier, I noticed a few unfamiliar drug names on the bottle scattered on her table. They didn't look like the usual cold medicine. And then there was that lingering medicinal smell on her. David had said she wasn't doing well. Looks like he wasn't wrong. But with her attitude, keeping everyone at arm's length, nothing gets through. How can I help? I can't force it. It won't work. With her tiny frame, it looks like a gust of wind could knock her down. Yet the stubbornness in her eyes hasn't diminished. Frustrating. The next day at work, my mind was completely gone. While going through emails, my fingers rested on the keyboard for ages, unable to type a single thing. All I could think about was that little, shabby room, and the coldness of her hands. During lunch, almost on autopilot, I pulled out my phone and opened the search bar. Based on the vague memory from last night, I typed in a few of the drug names I had seen. The search results came up, and my heart sank. Anxiolytics, sleep aids, and one for treating depression. I read through the entries: persistent low mood, loss of interest, anxiety, sleep disorders. Each term felt like a needle, piercing into my temples. So, it wasn't just a simple bad mood or tiredness. So when she cried for no reason, when she wandered the living room in the middle of the night, when she grew impatient with me, snapping at the smallest things, it wasn't because she had changed, wasn't because she was being difficult. It was because she was sick. And what the hell did I do? I thought she was being unreasonable, thought she was looking for trouble, argued with her, gave her the cold shoulder, and when she brought up the divorce, I even thought it was a relief. I leaned back in my chair, my chest tight and suffocating. The cold air from the office's AC blew, but I felt hot flashes running through me. So when we divorced, she didn't want anything. Was it because she felt like she was burdening me? Was she guilty? So now, she's living in that rundown place, carrying heavy loads, taking all those pills with terrible side effects. I suddenly stood up, startling Marco from the desk next to me. "George, what's wrong?" "Nothing. Just going out for a smoke." I walked to the fire escape, lit the cigarette, but didn't smoke it. I just watched the ash grow longer, then fall off. No, I can't let this slide. Just because she said it's none of my business doesn't mean it isn't. I'm going to get involved. But how? Should I just rush over and say, "Hey, I know you've got depression. Let me take care of you"? She'd probably throw a pill bottle at my face. I need a plan. One that she can't refuse. That afternoon, I left early and went to Jinsha Shinsuin again. I didn't get too close. Just found a low-key cafe across the street. Sat and waited. Around 7, I saw her coming out. She was still in that drab outfit, dragging the big canvas bag. Her head lowered as she walked towards the bus stop. Her back looked tired. I waited until she got on the bus, then paid my bill, got in the car, and followed at a distance. The bus made its way through 7 or 8 stops before pulling into an old neighborhood. She got off the bus, but didn't head home. Instead, she turned into a community hospital. My heart tightened, and I followed her. She picked up her medication at the outpatient window, then sat in a plastic chair in the hallway, holding the bag of meds, waiting for her number to be called. Her head was down, fingers twisted together, looking so lonely. I hid around the corner in the hallway, feeling uneasy. When did she start needing to come to a place like this to wait for medication? Back when she had a cold or fever. How many times had I dragged her to the hospital with gentle coaxing and persuasion? After about half an hour, I heard her name being called. She walked into one of the exam rooms. I hesitated for a moment. Then, almost instinctively, I moved closer. The door wasn't fully closed, leaving a small crack. I could hear the doctor asking, "How have you been feeling? Any improvement in your sleep? How is the new medication? Any side effects?" Her voice was very quiet, muffled. "Still can't sleep, headache, nausea, can't eat, and your mood? Same as always, no point in anything." Her voice sounded so defeated. The doctor sighed. "You can't stop the medication. You need to take it on time. Living alone. You need to be extra careful. If anything happens, let me know right away." I couldn't hear the rest clearly, the buzzing in my ears drowning out the sound. Can't eat, can't sleep, no point in anything. Those words circled around in my head like a tightening spell, growing tighter and tighter. When she came out, her face was even paler than before, and in her hand was another bag containing the new medication. I quickly retreated back to the corner, watching her slowly leave the hospital and stand at the curb, waiting for a bus. The wind blew through her hair, and she stared blankly at the flow of traffic, standing there for a long time. In that moment, I wanted to rush over to her, not caring if she wanted it or not, just shoving her into a car and taking her home. But I couldn't. I watched her get on another bus, disappearing into the crowd. I stood still, pulled out a cigarette, and realized my hand was shaking. Motherfucker. This isn't none of my business. This is my business, and it's bigger than I ever imagined. Chapter 6. I didn't go back to the office. I turned the car around and drove straight home. The half-dead golden pothos was still sitting on the balcony, looking like it was on its last breath. I stared at it for a long time, unable to find a way to vent my frustration. I walked over, picked up a cup, and slowly poured some water into the pot. The dry, cracked soil greedily absorbed the water, making a faint hissing sound. Damn it, I can't just let it die. After watering it, I collapsed on the couch, the silence in the room so thick it was suffocating. The doctor's words, Willow's pale face, and the things she said, can't sleep, nauseous, no point in anything, kept spinning around in my head like a revolving lantern. How did I not notice before? Was it because I was too busy with work? Or maybe I noticed, but I just didn't take it seriously. I thought she was just being moody, hard to please. Damn it, I rubbed my face, feeling suffocated inside. I can't force it. With her state, she couldn't handle pressure, and she definitely couldn't handle being pushed. I need to figure out a way she can accept. The next day, I went to Jinsha Shinsuin again. This time, I didn't wait in the cafe. I went straight to the small supermarket downstairs, bought some fruit, milk, and a bag of premium cat food. Carrying the stuff, I took a deep breath and went upstairs. Standing in front of her worn-out door, I hesitated for a moment before knocking. There was no sound from inside. I knocked again, a little harder. "Who is it?" Her voice came through the door, cautious. "It's me, George." There was a long silence from inside, long enough that I almost thought she wasn't going to open it. Then I heard the sound of the lock turning, and the door opened just a crack. She showed half of her face, her expression still lifeless, full of uncertainty. "Is something wrong?" She didn't seem to have any intention of letting me in. I lifted the bag in my hand, just passing by. Thought I'd stop by. Also, brought some food for the cat. The excuse was so weak, even I didn't believe it. She glanced at the bag, then back at me, saying nothing. "How's your hand?" she suddenly asked. I paused, lifting my hand. "It's fine. It's almost healed." Another awkward silence. "Thanks," she said, reaching for the bag, still not inviting me in. I didn't let go. "Aren't you going to invite me in?" I tried to sound casual. "Just standing at the door. What's that about?" She pressed her lips together, hesitated, her eyes avoiding mine. Just then, there was a loud clatter from inside, like something had fallen over. Her face changed immediately, and she turned and rushed into the room. Without thinking, I followed her inside. It was the orange cat, jumping onto the table and knocking over a bottle of pills she had left on the edge, spilling pills everywhere. She was scrambling to pick them up, her back looking frantic. I closed the door and walked over to crouch down and help her. The white pills were rolling everywhere. Her fingers trembled as she picked them up, not daring to look at me, quickly stuffing the pills back into the bottle like they were something shameful. "Is everything okay?" I asked. "It's fine." Her voice was muffled, and she gripped the bottle tightly, placing it in the farthest corner of the table. "It's just too mischievous." The tension in the air thickened. The culprit cat, however, was fine as usual, rubbing against my pants and meowing, probably drawn by the smell of the cat food. Thank God for the cat, or I might not have gotten in today. I tore open the bag of cat food and poured a little into the food bowl. The cat immediately pounced on it, eating it with loud, satisfied purrs. "You see, it likes it," I said, trying to make conversation. She stood to the side, twisting the edge of her shirt, still very uncomfortable. I glanced around the room. It looked even more shabby than it had at night. The window glass seemed to let in a bit of a draft. On the table, aside from the medicine, there was half of a cold steamed bun and a packet of pickled vegetables. My heart twisted. "Is this all you eat?" She followed my gaze, as if burned, quickly walking over to put the bun and pickled vegetables away. "I'm not hungry, just eating whatever." Bullshit. I had asked around about the work at the processing plant. "It's physically exhausting. How is this enough to get by?" I held back my frustration, not confronting her. I took out the milk and fruit I bought and placed them on the table. "Eat something nutritious. Look at how thin you are." She stared at the food, not touching it, not even saying thank you. After a long pause, she quietly said, "You don't come here anymore." "Why?" "It's not appropriate." She lifted her head, her eyes carrying a weary kind of stubbornness. "We're divorced. George, you doing this? It puts me in a difficult position." "I'm the one being put in a difficult position." I couldn't hold back, my voice rising. "Watching you eat cold buns and pickled vegetables. Am I not put in a difficult position?" Her eyes suddenly turned red, and she turned away, her face twisted in distress. "I don't need you to worry." "I'm going to worry," I shouted, the emotions I had been holding in for days finally exploding. "Willow, look at what you've become. If you're sick, treat it. If you don't have the money, tell me. Why are you just carrying on like this? Is this supposed to make you look strong?" She spun around, tears falling like a flood, her voice trembling. "What do you want me to tell you, George? That I haven't slept in days, that I'm about to go crazy, that I feel nauseous and can't eat anything, that I feel like living isn't worth it anymore. Do you think you could handle it when I told you all this? George, you'd just think I was annoying, that I was making a fuss." She gasped for breath, her tears coming harder. Yes, I'm sick. I've been dragging you down. So is it okay that I left? Is it okay that I stayed far away from you? Please, just leave me alone. I just want to rot here on my own. Don't remind me of how much I've failed in the past." After screaming, she was shaking, like a leaf in the wind. I stood there, stunned, my heart clenched in pain. So this is what she had been thinking all along. I watched her break down. All my anger melted away, leaving only a wave of overwhelming sorrow and regret. I took a step forward, wanting to hold her, but she flinched back like a frightened rabbit, crashing into the table. The pill bottle wobbled. Her eyes were filled with terror and rejection. "Don't touch me." My hand froze in midair. The only sounds in the room were her suppressed sobs and the cat eating. After what felt like forever, I slowly lowered my hand, my voice hoarse. "Okay, I'll go." I turned and opened the door. With my back to her, I said, "Take the medicine on time. If the cat food runs out, let me know." I didn't wait for her to respond, just closed the door behind me. Standing in the hallway, I listened to the faint sound of her crying from inside. My forehead pressed against the cold iron door, and I stood there for a long time. Damn it, this isn't over. Chapter 7. The door had no soundproofing at all. The muffled sobs from inside kept drilling into my ears, like a dull knife slicing through flesh. I leaned against the cold iron door, chain-smoking one after another, and soon there was a small pile of cigarette butts at my feet. Her words kept echoing in my head, sharp and painful. In her eyes, back then, I must have just been that asshole who couldn't stand her anymore. Maybe I really was that way. I don't know how much time passed, but the sobs inside slowly quieted down, and there was no more noise. I stubbed out my cigarette and tried the door handle, unlocked. When I left earlier, I had closed the door, but she hadn't locked it from the inside. I gently pushed the door open. The room wasn't brightly lit. Only a small desk lamp cast a dim yellow glow. Willow was curled up on the small couch beside the bed, looking like she had fallen asleep. Her face still had tear stains, and the corners of her eyes were red. The orange cat was nestled in her arms, watching me warily. On the table, the half-eaten steamed bun and pickled vegetables were gone. The milk carton I bought had been opened, and about half of it was gone. One of the apples was missing too. A small bit of relief washed over me. At least she's eating. I quietly walked over, intending to drape the thin blanket on the couch over her. As I got close, her eyelids fluttered, and she suddenly woke up. Seeing me, she instinctively shrank back, startling the cat, which jumped down from her lap. Why haven't you left yet? Her voice was hoarse, thick with nasal congestion. In her eyes, there was exhaustion, but also a hint of unease that was barely noticeable. I was worried you might do something stupid and jump off the 3rd floor. I tried to make my voice sound casual as I tossed the blanket over her. Cover up. It's cold. She grabbed the blanket without a word, not looking at me. The atmosphere became awkward again. I dragged over a creaky wooden chair and sat down a little distance away from her. Willow. I took a deep breath, looking at the dark night sky outside the window, then continued. Let's talk. Don't rush me out. She stayed silent, her fingers nervously picking at the edge of the blanket. I'm sorry about earlier. My voice came out a bit dry. I shouldn't have yelled at you. She still didn't say anything. When did your illness start? I asked carefully. Her finger stopped picking at the blanket. It took a long time before she spoke softly. It's always been there. In college, I'd get a little moody sometimes. You just didn't notice. My heart sank that early. Then, after I started working, the pressure got worse, and it seemed to get more serious. Her voice remained flat, like she was talking about someone else. Couldn't sleep, didn't want to eat, always felt like crying. Nothing seemed worth it. Then, why didn't you tell me? I regretted asking the moment the words left my mouth. She had already answered that earlier. Sure enough, she tugged at the corner of her mouth, like she was trying to smile but couldn't. Tell you what, that George. I think I have depression, and I feel awful. What would you think? Would you patiently comfort me, go with me to see a doctor, or would you think I'm overthinking and too dramatic? I was speechless. With my temper back then, most likely, it would have been the latter. I'd probably have thought she was affecting my work. Then, it just kept getting harder to control. She continued in a low voice, like she was talking to herself. I kept fighting with you, causing trouble. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't help it. Every time I saw you annoyed with me, avoiding me, I just hated myself more. She sniffed, burying her face in the blanket. The divorce. I was the one who brought it up. I knew you were tired too. The house, the car, everything was earned by you. I couldn't bring myself to take it. I left. It's better for both of us. She spoke so calmly, and yet her words hit me like a storm inside. So all that time when she was being difficult, when she was overreacting, was it all because of her illness? And I just went along with her overreaction, pushing her out of my life. Have you seen a doctor? All this time, my throat tightened. I have, she whispered. I've been on medication the whole time, but it doesn't seem to help. I've seen a few different doctors, tried several types of medicine. It's hard to bear when I take them, but not taking them is even worse. She paused, her voice dropping lower. And the money, it's almost all gone. So that's why she was carrying those heavy bags. That's why she's living in this rundown place, eating cold buns. My chest tightened painfully, and I wanted to say something, but my throat felt like it was blocked. The room fell silent again, only the sound of the wind leaking through the cracks in the window. After a long pause, I stood up. She tensed, instinctively, and looked at me. I didn't look at her. I walked to the table, picked up the milk carton she had opened, and grabbed an apple. Then I walked over to the kitchen area, really just a tiny sink and countertop. I found a dull fruit knife and began peeling the apple slowly. George, she spoke up from behind me, her voice full of doubt. I didn't turn around, focusing on peeling the apple, though it came out uneven. I said, don't eat cold buns anymore. It's bad for your stomach. I handed her the peeled apple. She looked at the apple but didn't take it, her expression complicated. Take it. I pushed it into her hands. Willow, I was an idiot before. I didn't pay attention, and I'm sorry. Her fingers trembled as she held the apple. But when you said we should just live our own lives after the divorce, I can't do that. I looked into her eyes, speaking with rare seriousness. Seeing you like this, I pointed at my chest. I can't stand it. You don't have to feel obligated to me. Don't feel pressured. Just think of me as a persistent ex-husband, clinging to you. I tried to make my tone lighter. The illness, it needs to be treated. Don't worry about the money. She lowered her head, staring at the apple in her hands, and tears began to silently fall again, landing on her wrist. Stop crying. I felt a bit helpless, grabbed a tissue, and handed it to her. Crying too much will hurt your eyes. She didn't take the tissue, nor did she look up, her shoulders trembling slightly. I sighed and set the tissue beside her. I'm leaving. You take care of yourself. I walked to the door and opened it. George, she suddenly called out to me. I paused and turned around. She looked up, her eyes red and swollen, like a rabbit's, her voice small and shaky. The apple. I can't eat it. I looked at the apple she had barely taken a bite from, and my heart ached. Okay, then just leave it for now, I said. Tomorrow, I'll bring you some porridge, hot. I didn't wait for her to refuse. I closed the door behind me. This time, I didn't linger by the door. I walked downstairs, my steps heavy. The suffocating feeling in my chest had eased a bit, but it felt even heavier, like carrying a stone soaked in water. I knew this was just the beginning. Chapter 8. The next morning, I got up early, barely sleeping at all. My mind was a mess. One moment with the image of Willow's red, swollen eyes, and the next with the bottles of medicine on her table. I went downstairs to the porridge shop she used to love, packed some pumpkin and millet porridge, a few light side dishes, and a basket of shrimp dumplings. Didn't know how her appetite was now, so I figured I'd start with something soft. I drove to her building, and it was just past 7. The old neighborhood was already awake, with elderly folks carrying baskets of vegetables in and out. I carried the breakfast upstairs, standing in front of her door and taking a deep breath before knocking. I knocked several times before I heard rustling sounds inside, along with a cat meowing. The door opened just a crack. Willow stood there in an old, worn-out nightgown, her hair a mess, eyes swollen and pale, her expression still confused. Why are you here so early? Her voice was hoarse. I brought breakfast. I lifted the bag in my hand. Hot pumpkin porridge, good for your stomach. She hesitated for a moment, instinctively taking the bag, the warmth from it reaching her hands through the plastic. She didn't speak, nor did she invite me in. She just blocked the door. Take it, eat it while it's hot. I looked at her. She glanced down at the bag, then back at me. Her lips moved like she wanted to say something, but in the end, she just stepped aside, saying, "Come in." The room still had the lingering scent of medicine mixed with the smell of cat, but it didn't seem as overpowering now. The half-eaten apple from last night was gone, probably thrown away. She placed the breakfast on the small table and stood aside, looking a little unsure of what to do. Sit and eat. I pulled over a creaky chair and leaned against the wall. I've already eaten. She hesitated for a moment, then slowly sat down, opening the plastic bag and taking out the porridge. The porridge was still steaming, but she held the spoon, not moving for a long while. Not to your taste? I asked. She shook her head, scooping a small spoonful and slowly bringing it to her mouth. Then she ate another small spoonful. I felt a bit of relief inside. At least she's eating. The orange cat, attracted by the smell, rubbed up against my legs, meowing. I broke a shrimp dumpling in half, blew on it to cool it down, and placed it in the cat's food bowl. The room was quiet except for her soft sipping of the porridge and the sound of the cat munching. She ate about half a bowl before putting down the spoon and pushing the bowl away. Just that much? I frowned. I'm full. Her voice was still soft. Thank you. Did you take your medicine? I asked. She hesitated, her gaze falling on the bottle of pills at the far end of the table. I'll take it later. I didn't give her a choice. Take it now. I'll watch you. She suddenly looked up at me, her eyes filled with resistance and maybe some embarrassment. George, you don't have to do this. It's necessary. I cut her off, walked over, grabbed the bottle, checked the instructions, poured out 2 pills, and grabbed the half cup of water she had left. I handed both to her. Take them. She stared at me, her eyes a little red again, but this time, she didn't cry. After a few seconds of silence, she finally took the pills and water, tilting her head back and swallowing the medicine, her brows furrowing tightly as if the pills were bitter. Watching her take the medicine, I felt a little more at ease inside. From now on, I'll come by every morning to make sure you eat breakfast and take your medicine, I said, my tone flat, like I was informing her. She stared at me in surprise. Don't you have to work? Work is not more important than you taking your medicine. I picked up her bowl, covered it, and asked, what do you want for lunch? I'll bring it over. George. She raised her voice a bit, clearly panicked and rejecting. You really don't need to do this. I can manage on my own. You can manage my ass. I wasn't being polite. Manage by eating cold buns and pickled vegetables. Manage by treating medicine like food and getting so thin you look like a ghost. My words left her speechless, her lips trembling as she turned her face away, not looking at me. Willow. I put the porridge bowl down, looking at her profile. I'm not asking you. I'm going to take charge of this. You can yell at me, push me away. It won't make a difference unless you move out of the city where I can't find you. I'll come every day. She turned back to face me, her eyes glistening with tears and a hint of anger from being cornered. What right do you have to control me? We're divorced. Because I know now. I was getting angry too, my voice slipping out of control. Because I can't just sit by and watch you destroy yourself. Is that reason enough? She looked at me, her chest heaving, like she was on the verge of losing it, but also like she had no choice. In the end, it seemed like she ran out of energy. She lowered her head, her voice barely audible. Do whatever you want. With that, she stopped looking at me, got up, and went to the bed. She turned her back to me, lying down and wrapping herself in the blanket so tightly that not even a strand of hair was visible. Was this her way of giving in, or was she too tired to argue? I looked at the small mound of the blanket on the bed, a mix of emotions flooding my mind. Fine. If that's what she wants, I'll do as I please. I tidied up the breakfast on the table, throwing away the things that needed to be thrown out and leaving the rest. I also filled her kettle with water and started boiling it. Water's boiling. Pour it yourself. I'll come back at noon. I said this to the unmoving bundle of blankets. No response. I stood there for a while, then grabbed the trash bag and left the room. I went downstairs and threw the garbage into the bin. The morning sunlight was a bit harsh. I took out my phone and sent a message to my assistant. The morning meeting is moved to the afternoon. Personal matters. The assistant replied quickly. Okay, Mr. Wong. I leaned against the car and lit a cigarette. Damn it. Looks like I can't settle down at work today. But strangely, the frustration that had been building up for days seemed to have dissipated quite a bit. At least, she took the medicine and ate some hot porridge. Well, it's a start. Chapter 9. For the next few days, I stuck to the routine like clockwork, running to Jianxia Shinsuan 3 times a day like I was clocking into work. In the morning, I'd bring her breakfast and make sure she took her medicine. In the afternoon, I'd bring more food. In the evening, I'd check if she'd eaten dinner and taken her medicine. Willow went from outright resistance and silence to slowly getting used to it, but she still didn't look happy, and her words were few and far between. Most of the time, when I spoke, she would just respond with "oh," or "got it," like a robotic, emotionless answer machine. But I could feel it. Her tough exterior seemed to have thinned a little bit. At least now, when I walked in, she didn't immediately tense up, and occasionally, she would take something from me without hesitation. That afternoon, I arrived a little earlier than usual, and she wasn't back from the processing plant yet. I waited by the small supermarket downstairs, chatting with the old man who was fanning himself and handing him a cigarette. Old man, that girl on the 3rd floor, living alone here, must be tough. Doesn't anyone come check on her? I casually asked. The old man took a drag, shook his head. Never seen anyone. When she moved in, she was alone, dragging a big suitcase. Looked pretty pitiful. No one comes to visit. Only an occasional delivery guy. He paused, lowering his voice a bit. But a while ago, a man came looking for her. Didn't look like a good guy. They were shouting. Almost got into a fight. My heart tightened. A man. What did he look like? Maybe in his 40s, wearing a leather jacket, and his voice was loud as hell. He was saying something like, "Your parents don't care about you, so you might as well die out here." Sounded awful. The old man grimaced. That girl's usually quiet, but that day she stood her ground. She gave him an earful, and after a while, the guy probably got bored, cursed a bit, and left. Parents don't care, die out here. I had asked Willow about her parents when we were getting married, but she avoided the subject completely. At the wedding, her side of the family consisted only of her uncle. A sudden unease gripped me, and I thought about her illness, that reckless stubbornness of hers, and the way she refused to back down from anyone. When Willow came back, dragging the heavy bag, I didn't rush over like usual. I watched as she struggled to pull the bag off the tricycle, sweat dripping from her forehead, her steps unsteady. I walked over silently and took the heavy bag from her hands. She paused for a moment, said nothing, and let go. We went upstairs together, silently opened the door. I placed the bag in the corner, turned to pour her some water. She collapsed on the small couch, panting, her face even paler than usual. I handed her the cup. She took it, her fingers icy. "Just now," the old man downstairs said. I started casually, watching the cat nudge against my legs. "A man came looking for you a while ago. You two had a pretty heated argument." She froze, the cup in her hand shaking, a little water spilling out. She looked up at me, her eyes instantly filled with caution and a hint of panic. "Who? What did he say?" Her voice was tense. "He didn't say much, just that you had an argument." I didn't mention the nasty things he had said. "Who was it? Was it trouble? Do you want me to?" "No need." She cut me off, her tone sharp, slamming the water cup onto the table. "My business is none of your concern." The same line again. I watched her suddenly snap, like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. The suspicions I had slowly began to take shape. "Was it your father?" I asked. She stiffened suddenly, turned her face away, not looking at me, and stayed silent. She had just admitted it. What did he come for? Money. I tried to keep my voice calm. I had heard Willow vaguely mention her father before. He wasn't a good man. She still didn't say anything, her fingers digging into the edge of the sofa. "What about your mom?" I asked again. I remembered that she almost never mentioned her family. She suddenly let out a bitter laugh, her voice tinged with cold sarcasm. "My mom, she's barely holding on herself. She's in the hospital, at a psychiatric hospital." I was stunned. So, my throat went dry. "Your illness, is it like her?" "Yeah, it's hereditary." "Happy now." She turned her head, her eyes bloodshot, filled with suppressed pain and some kind of self-destruction. "That's the gene in our family." "Crazy gene. Now you know. Can you leave now?" Stay away from me, so you don't catch it. Her emotions flared up, her breath quickening, her shoulders trembling again. I felt like something had slammed into my chest, a painful, numbing sensation. So this was it. It wasn't just the pressure from work. It was something she couldn't escape, a shadow that haunted her. She was so afraid of being a burden, so afraid of ending up like her mother. I watched her fall apart, unable to speak, unable to leave. After a while, when she had calmed down a little, I finally spoke, my voice hoarse. So back then, you were afraid I'd hate you because of this? She bit her lip, silent tears falling down her face, neither admitting nor denying it. Your dad doesn't take care of your mom? I asked. Him? She forced a laugh that was uglier than a cry. He doesn't care. When my mom was seriously ill, he took all the money and ran, changed his phone number, and never showed up again. Now he must have heard I'm here and came looking for money. He said if I don't give it to him, he'll go make a scene at my workplace. She couldn't continue, burying her face in her palms, her frail shoulders shaking violently. I stood there, watching her cry and struggle for air. The anger inside me flared up, but it wasn't directed at her. It was aimed at that worthless man, at this goddamn fate. I took a step forward, wanting to pat her back. She suddenly shoved my hand away, lifting her head. Her tear-filled eyes blurred as she shouted at me. Just leave, don't you get it? My family is like this, a pile of crap. I'm just a burden. Will you just stay away from me, please? I stood there, watching her break down, unmoving. When she finally ran out of energy to shout, when she was out of breath, I spoke, my voice quiet but clear. Are you done? She gasped, glaring at me. Once you're done, let me say something. I looked into her eyes. First, your illness. We'll treat it properly. It has nothing to do with genetics. It can be controlled. Second, if your father comes to cause trouble again, tell me, and I'll handle it. Third, I paused, speaking slowly, deliberately. You're not a burden. Never were. She looked at me, the madness and resistance slowly fading from her eyes, replaced by confusion and fragile vulnerability. I didn't say anything else. I turned and went to the kitchen, filled her glass with warm water, and grabbed some tissues. Wipe your face, then eat. I handed her the things, my tone firm. I bought those little dumplings from the place you used to like. If you don't eat them now, they'll get cold. She stared at the tissue, then at the takeout box on the table. After a long pause, she slowly, very slowly, picked up one of the slightly warm dumplings and took a small bite. Then, tears fell again, mixing with the dumpling as she swallowed it down. I didn't try to comfort her, and I didn't leave. I just stood by her side. I knew, today, that hard shell had cracked open just a little. Whether light can get through, we'll see in the future. Chapter 10. The days just passed, one by one. I went to see her every day, bringing food and medicine, making sure she ate. Though she still didn't smile much and barely spoke, at least she didn't act like she did at first, completely on edge, trying to push me away. Sometimes I'd find her staring blankly at the pile of medicine, her eyes empty. I didn't rush her, just sat nearby, or found other things to do, like sealing up the drafty spots around the window or fixing the wobbly legs on the table. The fat cat, though, was getting friendlier with me every day, rubbing up against my pants whenever I visited. She still didn't eat much, and the cat ate more than her, but at least it was hot food, and her face wasn't as ghostly pale as before. Until that night, I went over after finishing work, around 9 o'clock. I knocked on the door, but there was no response. I knocked again, louder this time, but still nothing. My heart sank with a bad premonition. Willow, open the door. I knocked harder, my voice growing louder. Finally, there was a slight sound from inside, like something fell. Then I heard the lock turn, and the door opened a crack. She was standing behind it, her face as pale as paper, her hair soaked with sweat and sticking to her forehead. Her nightgown was soaked too, and her whole body was shaking. Her eyes were unfocused, drifting, unable to find a focus. What's wrong with you? My heart tightened as I pushed the door open and caught her. Her skin was burning hot. I feel sick. Her voice was hoarse, almost inaudible, and I was barely able to keep her from collapsing to the floor. Cold, then too hot. I touched her forehead, and it was terrifyingly hot. She definitely had a fever, and it was severe. Let's go to the hospital, I decided instantly, bending down to pick her up. No, she suddenly started to struggle. She didn't have much strength, but she was insistent. I don't want to go to the hospital. I'll be fine after a nap. Bullshit, I snapped. You're burning up like this and you won't go to the hospital. Do you want to lose your mind? Her medication already had a lot of side effects, and with this high of a fever, who knew what could happen? She shook her head, tears suddenly falling, mixing with sweat. I can't go. Too expensive. Too much money. She was still thinking about money at a time like this. I felt a rush of frustration and anger, mixed with pity. Damn it, I'll pay. You don't have to pay me back. I shouted at her, not giving her a chance to resist. I grabbed her and lifted her up in my arms. She was shockingly light, Hardly any weight in my arms. She must have really had no strength left, or maybe the fever had clouded her mind. But she didn't fight me anymore. She rested her head on my shoulder, softly sobbing. Like a wounded little animal, I hurried down the stairs with her, shoved her into the car, and as I buckled her in, her hand clutched the edge of my shirt, her eyes shut tightly, her wet lashes trembling. I floored the gas pedal, not caring about running a red light. She slumped in the passenger seat, breathing erratically, muttering nonsense in a haze. We arrived at the emergency room. I rushed to register, had her temperature checked, and saw the doctor. 39.8 degrees Celsius. The doctor asked about her condition and, after hearing she had been taking antidepressants, her expression turned serious. He immediately ordered a blood test, worried about a possible infection or adverse reaction to the medication. I rushed around, paying fees, picking up the medication, and helping her with the blood test. She was in and out of consciousness, occasionally opening her eyes to look at me, her gaze confused but dependent. Her fingers never let go of my shirt. By the time we got her settled in the observation room, it was already past midnight. The cold liquid slowly dripped into her veins, and she seemed to relax a little. Her frown loosened, and her breathing steadied. I pulled a chair up to the bed, watching the liquid level in the 4-bottle slowly drop. Only then did the tightness in my chest begin to loosen a little. A nurse came by and checked her temperature again. It had gone down slightly. She seemed to settle into a deeper sleep. I leaned against the wall, completely exhausted, but not a trace of sleepiness, staring at her face, still pale even in her sleep. I remembered her calling out, "Mom," through her tears earlier, and her, "It's too much money." This fool. How long had she been trying to bear all of this alone? In the early hours, when the 4 was almost done, she woke up. Her gaze was first confused, then she looked at the white ceiling, the smell of disinfectant in the air. She froze for a moment, then saw me, her pupils shrinking as if it was just then that she realized where she was. She instinctively tried to sit up. "Don't move." I pressed her back down. "It's almost done. I'll call the nurse to remove the needle." She froze, her gaze sweeping over the 4 bag before returning to my face. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Her eyes were full of complexity, panic, embarrassment, and maybe even a hint of confusion. The nurse came over, removed the needle, and gave a few instructions on what to watch for. I nodded, taking mental notes. Once the nurse left, it was just the 2 of us in the room. The silence in the air felt awkward. "Thank you." She spoke first, her voice still hoarse, her head lowered as she refused to look at me. "How much did it cost?" I'll pay you back when I get my salary." "Shut up." I cut her off, feeling the familiar, unwelcome anger bubbling up inside me. "If you bring up money again, I swear I'll drop you off at the hospital entrance. You hear me?" She bit her lip, falling silent. I sighed and handed her the jacket I brought. "Put this on. Let's go home and sleep." She quietly took the jacket and put it on. Getting out of bed, her steps were still unsteady. I reached out to steady her, but she instinctively moved away, not completely dodging me. My hand landed on her arm. Her body stiffened for a moment, but she didn't pull away. I helped her out of the hospital, and the cold wind of the early morning made her shrink her neck. We got into the car and didn't speak the whole way. When I stopped the car downstairs, I turned to look at her. "Can you make it upstairs on your own?" She nodded, unbuckling her seatbelt and reaching for the door. Just as her hand touched the door handle, she stopped, with her back to me. Her voice was so low, almost carried away by the wind. "When I was sick before, I used to wish someone would stay by me like this." My heart tightened, as if something had tugged at it. She finished speaking, didn't wait for my reaction, and opened the door to get out. She walked quickly toward the entrance. I sat in the car, staring at her disappearing figure, not moving for a long time. In the reflection on the car window, I saw my own tired face. I knew. It seemed like the ice in her heart was starting to melt. Chapter 11. Things felt different ever since that night at the hospital. Willow still didn't talk much, but when she saw me coming over every day, she no longer acted like she wanted me to leave. Sometimes I'd come, and she'd even have the hot water ready. Although I still had to force her to eat this and that, her resistance had lessened a lot. The most she'd do now is frown and then reluctantly open her mouth like she had resigned to it. That fat cat had completely become my sidekick. Whenever I showed up, it would roll over and expose its belly. Everything seemed to be heading in a good direction. If I ignored the occasional moments when she would gaze out the window, that persistent, gray look in her eyes that wouldn't go away, until that Saturday afternoon, I had brought over some soup I'd just made. But before I even reached the stairs, I heard shouting from upstairs, a man's hoarse voice cursing, and Willow's sharp rebuttals. I knew something was wrong, so I rushed up the stairs. Sure enough, her battered iron door was open, and a middle-aged man wearing a shabby leather jacket and with greasy skin was shouting at Willow, spitting with rage. "I raised you all these years, and now you've got wings. You don't want to give me money. You think I can't make you disappear from this neighborhood?" Willow's face was ashen, her whole body trembling. but her back was straight. She yelled back, "I don't have a penny, get out." "Bullshit. No money. And you live here? No money to see a doctor. Take medicine. Must be some guy giving you money. Tell me, is it that kid from last time? Bring him out. I'll break his legs." I stormed forward and shouted, "What the hell are you doing?" I stepped in front of Willow, pushing her back as I blocked the man's way. The man was taken aback, looking me up and down with a blurry, scheming gaze, as if assessing my strength. He sneered, "Who the hell are you?" "Who the hell are you?" I retorted, stepping closer. I was half a head taller than him, and with my years of training, I easily had the physical advantage. He shrank back a little but still tried to act tough. "I'm her father. I came to get money from my daughter. That's my right. Who the hell are you? Get out of the way." So, it really was the piece of trash father. Willow was behind me, clutching the back of my jacket tightly, shaking like a leaf. I suppressed the anger in my chest and said calmly, "She has no money for you. Leave now." "She has no money, but you do." The man's eyes lit up as he switched his focus to me, like a hyena sensing prey. "You must be her lover, right? Fine. You pay for her. I raised her, spent all that money on her, and now it's time she pays back. Not much, just 2,000 to start." I couldn't help but laugh at his shamelessness. "I'm not giving you a single penny. Now, get out immediately." "Hey, you little bastard. How dare you talk to me like that?" He was infuriated and tried to push me. Before his hand even touched me, I grabbed his wrist and twisted it hard. He immediately screamed like a pig being slaughtered. "Ah, it hurts. Let go." "Listen." I leaned in closer, lowering my voice until it was a growl. "From now on, I'm in charge of Willow. If you ever come here to harass her again, see what happens. I have plenty of ways to make you regret it." I released his wrist, and he staggered back a few steps, rubbing his arm, looking at me with a mix of fear and rage, but not daring to approach. "Get out." I glared at him, my eyes cold enough to kill. He muttered a few curses under his breath, calling me all sorts of names: piece of trash, cheap bastard, ungrateful, and then shuffled down the stairs, his voice fading as he disappeared. When I no longer heard his insults, I finally breathed a sigh of relief, feeling like the muscles in my back had just relaxed. I turned to Willow, who was still in the same position, her head down, her shoulders trembling. "It's over. He's gone." I spoke softly. She didn't respond. Worried, I reached out to pat her. "Willow." She suddenly jerked her head up, tears streaming down her face, her eyes bloodshot. But it wasn't fear I saw in her eyes, it was something much darker, an overwhelming mix of despair and anger, as if she were on the edge of breaking. "Why do you have to interfere with me?" she suddenly screamed, her voice tearing through the air. "Do you see it? This is my family. This is the father I got. Useless. A vampire. Are you satisfied now? Had enough of the joke?" She completely lost control, shoving me away with all her strength. She ran into the room, knocking over the medicine bottles, the water cup, and the soup I brought. Everything crashed to the ground. The sound of breaking glass and scattering pills filled the air. The cat, terrified, darted under the bed. "Leave. Just leave." She screamed hysterically, her chest heaving like she couldn't catch her breath. "I don't want your pity. I don't want you to see this. Leave. Leave and never come back. Please." By the time she finished, her voice had become hoarse and unrecognizable. She collapsed against the wall, sliding down to the floor, burying her face in her knees, and sobbed uncontrollably. Her cries were filled with too much hurt, shame, and pain. I watched the mess on the floor, her small, shaking body huddled in a ball as she wept. My heart felt like it was being squeezed by an icy hand, both painful and suffocating. I didn't leave. I stepped over the broken pieces and walked over to her, crouching down in front of her. "Are you done?" I asked, my voice eerily calm. She was trembling so violently. She didn't respond. I watched her shoulders shudder and continued. "Once you're done, let me speak. Your father is a scumbag, no doubt. But this isn't your fault. It has nothing to do with you." Her sobs quieted slightly. "You are you, and he is him. Let him rot, and you live your life." I spoke with no fluctuation in my tone, but there was a deep firmness to it. "I'm looking after you, not because I pity you." I paused, took a deep breath, and said the words I'd been holding in for so long, "Because I can't let you go." Her crying stopped abruptly. Her body froze. The room fell into silence, broken only by her muffled sobs. After a long, long time, she slowly, painfully lifted her head from her knees. Tears streaked her face, her eyes swollen like peaches, filled with confusion, helplessness, and a touch of disbelief. She looked at me, her lips trembling as though she wanted to say something, but no words came out. I didn't look away from her gaze. I let her look at me. I knew those words I had waited too long to say, and so had she. The soup on the floor was still slowly spreading, and the air was filled with the mixed scent of medicine and food, an overwhelming mess. But in the midst of that mess, something felt like it was truly beginning to change. Chapter 12. The floor was still a mess. Soup mixed with broken glass and pills. The air thick with a strange smell. Willow sat on the floor, looking up at me, tears still hanging on her eyelashes, ready to fall. Her expression was complex, like she didn't dare to believe it, but also like something had burned her, making her desperately want to hide. I didn't rush her, nor did I look away. The words had been spoken, like water spilled out of a cup, impossible to take back, and I didn't want to take them back. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. She buried her face back into her knees, her shoulders shaking even harder than before, but no more crying. Was she scared, or didn't she believe me? I sighed, stood up, and didn't pay attention to her. I went to the kitchen to grab a broom and dustpan, and started cleaning up the broken pieces on the floor. The battlefield had to be cleaned up first, otherwise, there'd be no place to stand. I swept my side, and she stayed in her corner. Neither of us said anything. The only sounds were the broom sweeping the floor and her muffled sobs. After I cleaned up the pieces, I mopped the floor twice, and the weird smell started to fade. I set the overturned chair back upright and picked up the medicine bottles. Thankfully, not all of them had shattered, though a lot had spilled. After finishing the cleaning, I was sweating lightly. I straightened up and looked at the corner. She was still in the same position, but she seemed a little calmer, at least not shaking anymore. I walked over, extended my hand to her. Get up, the floor is cold. She didn't move. My hand hovered in the air, and I didn't pull it back. We stood there like that for about a minute before she slowly lifted her head. Her red eyes locked onto my hand, then glanced at me. Then, as if making a huge decision, she slowly placed her hand in mine. Her fingers were icy and still trembling slightly. I tightened my grip and gently pulled her up. She seemed to have numb legs, staggering a little, and I instinctively reached out to steady her. She immediately pulled her hand back as if shocked, taking a step back, leaning against the wall, her head lowered, not daring to look at me. Thank you, her voice was barely audible, like a mosquito. Are you hungry? I ignored her thanks and asked instead. After everything that had happened, it was nearly evening. She shook her head, then nodded again, seeming confused even to herself. The soup spilled. I'll go downstairs and get something to eat. What do you want? I asked. Anything, she murmured softly. Wait here. I went downstairs to the still open Shaw County snack shop, ordered 2 servings of wontons, a few steamed dumplings, and made sure to get a bowl of soup. When I returned, she had already tidied up the mess on the floor a little, at least enough to walk around. She was wiping the table with a cloth, but her movements were slow and stiff. I placed the food on the cleaned table. Eat. She put down the cloth, washed her hands, and silently sat down. I unwrapped the disposable chopsticks and handed them to her. She took them and began eating the wontons in small bites, eating so slowly, so carefully, as if the wontons were some precious treasure that needed to be treated gently. I sat across from her, eating my portion in silence. Halfway through her meal, she suddenly stopped, not lifting her head. Her voice was quiet. What you said earlier, is it true? I paused for a moment, setting my chopsticks down. Which part? She went silent again, her ears turning slightly red. I understood. The part about not being able to let you go. Her head lowered even more, almost buried in her bowl. I answered softly, my voice not loud but clear. It's true. Her fingers tightened around the chopsticks, her knuckles going white. Another long silence followed. The only sound was the quiet clink of eating. After a long while, as if gathering all her courage, she spoke in a quick, almost inaudible whisper. I also can't let go. After saying that, it was as if she had drained all her energy. She suddenly stood up, quickly grabbed the half-eaten bowl, and walked briskly toward the kitchen sink. With her back to me, she turned on the tap, pretending to busy herself with washing the dishes. The sound of water rushing was loud. I sat there, watching her back, feeling like something had gently bumped into my chest, leaving me feeling soft and utterly helpless. For her to say that, it really wasn't easy. I didn't chase after her, nor did I confront her. I just sat there and finished the steamed dumplings she hadn't eaten. After she took her time washing the dishes, she dried her hands and turned around. The unnatural flush on her face hadn't completely faded. Your medicine, I reminded her. You haven't taken it yet tonight. Oh, she replied, walking to the table and picking up the surviving bottle of medicine. She poured out the pills and swallowed them with the warm water. She didn't need me to watch over her this time. After taking her medicine, she stood there, a little unsure of what to do next. I stood up. I'm leaving. I'll come back tomorrow morning. She nodded without speaking. I walked to the door and opened it. George, she suddenly called after me. I turned around. She stood under the light, her fingers twisting the corner of her shirt, her gaze flickering, her voice very soft. Be careful on the road. I froze for a moment, then nodded. Close the door. I shut the door behind me and didn't leave immediately. I waited until I heard the sound of the door being locked before turning and heading downstairs. The night wind brushed against my face, a little chilly, but there was a heat stirring in my chest. She said, "See you tomorrow." And she said, "Be careful on the road." All right. It seems like this long battle is finally showing some light. Chapter 13. It felt like time had moved forward just a little. I spent some money and had David arrange for a few people from the streets to set up a trap for Willow's bastard father. Now, he'll never be able to cause trouble for Willow again in his life. Though Willow still kept to herself. Whenever I spoke 10 words, she'd occasionally respond with 1 or 2. There was even one time when I complained about a difficult client at work, and she actually laughed lightly, though she quickly composed herself again. But I saw it. I even brought over that nearly dead golden pothos, and under my daily care, it actually sprouted a few half-yellow, half-green leaves, trembling but alive. One morning, Willow stared at those new leaves for a long time. I thought everything was getting better. I really thought so. Until that day. As usual, I brought over some takeout after work. I knocked on the door. No one answered. I knocked again, but still no sound. A bad feeling instantly grabbed me, and I pulled out my phone to call her. It was off. Fuck. I cursed and pounded on the door harder. "Willow, open the door. Do you hear me?" The neighbor across the hall was woken up by the noise and poked her head out. It was an older woman, who snapped, "Stop knocking. I haven't seen her all afternoon. It's been so noisy. She hasn't been home all afternoon." I had checked with the factory. They usually get off around 5 or 6. I suppressed the panic in my chest, apologized, and ran downstairs. I dialed David's number as I ran. "David, hurry. Help me find someone. Willow might be in trouble." David sounded startled on the other end. "George, what's going on? Take it easy and tell me." "Take it easy, my ass. Her phone's off. She's not at home. And the factory confirmed she left early this afternoon." "Think, where could she have gone?" My voice was trembling as I jumped into the car and floored the gas pedal. All right, George, don't panic. I'll find out what happened." "Do you know where she usually goes?" "Where does she usually go? All I know is her house, the factory, and the community hospital. Where else could she go?" I drove around the area near her home like a headless chicken, scanning every figure on the street, my heart pounding so fast it felt like it was about to explode. The terrible thought flashed uncontrollably through my mind. Did her condition suddenly worsen? Did something happen to her? Or? Panic surged like cold waves, overwhelming me, making my fingers go numb. I even drove to the community hospital, rushed in, and asked around. The nurse said she hadn't been there today. Minutes turned into hours, and the night had fully settled in. David still had no news, only confirming that the factory said she had taken the afternoon off and left early. She left early. Where did she go? I stopped the car by the roadside, pounding my fist on the steering wheel. The horn blared loudly, echoing sharply in the quiet night. I was powerless. The feeling of being completely out of control and unable to find her was fucking awful. I slumped back in the seat, feeling suffocated. That's when I realized my hands were shaking badly. Just as I was about to lose all hope, my phone suddenly rang. It was an unknown number. I immediately answered, my voice hoarse. "Hello." There was a brief silence on the other end, then a faint and familiar voice, thick with congestion as if she had been crying. "George." It was Willow. I immediately sat up straight, my heart gripped as if someone had tightly clenched it and then released it. "Where are you? Are you okay?" I'm at." Her voice was broken, the background noise quiet. "The Riverside. That park." "The Riverside Park? It's pretty far from here." "What the hell is she doing there?" "Stay where you are and don't move. Send me your location. I'll be there soon," I nearly shouted, immediately starting the car. She replied, her voice sounding extremely tired and hollow. The call didn't end, and I could hear her faint breathing, along with the distant sound of wind. I couldn't hang up, terrified that if I did, she'd disappear again. I couldn't even count how many red lights I ran through. All I could think about was one thing: faster, faster. Following the location she sent, I parked the car on the side of the road and nearly ran into the park. It was quiet at night, with only a few dim streetlights. I walked along the riverside, searching, and finally saw her on a secluded bench. She was curled up on the bench, hugging her knees, her head buried, her frail form looking incredibly small and lonely under the dim light. Her old canvas bag was placed beside her. I rushed over, panting, stopping in front of her. "Willow." She slowly lifted her head. Tears stained her face, her eyes red and swollen, her gaze empty and unfocused, her skin pale as death. She looked at me, but it seemed like she couldn't recognize me. Or perhaps, it was like she was staring through me, looking at something else. My heart tightened. I crouched down, holding her shoulders. Her body was cold, still trembling slightly. "What happened? Did something happen? Did someone hurt you?" I asked urgently, my voice softening instinctively, not wanting to scare her. She looked at me, her eyes slowly focusing, like she was just realizing it was me. Her lips trembled, and without warning, Tears began to pour out again. George. Her voice broke, filled with immense despair. I went for a follow-up today. What did the doctor say? My heart sank suddenly. She shook her head, tears falling harder. The doctor said the medicine isn't working. I might need to switch to a different one, a more expensive one. Anne. She choked on her words, her breathing becoming more erratic. What else? Take your time. Don't rush. I tightened my grip on her shoulders, trying to offer her some strength. And the doctor said, my condition might make it really hard for me to have children. She finally got the words out, and then, as if all her strength had been drained, she slumped down, crying uncontrollably. What should I do? George, what should I do? I'm just a useless person. I can't do anything right. She cried as if she was releasing all the grievances and despair that had been building up inside her. So it was because of this. My heart felt like it had been struck hard by something, a sharp pain and a deep ache. It wasn't about the child, but the overwhelming pain she was feeling in this moment of complete breakdown and self-denial. I watched her trembling in my arms, saying nothing. I just reached out, pulling her into a tight embrace. She stiffened for a moment, but then, as if she had found a lifeline, she clung to me desperately, burying her face in my chest. Her muffled cries echoed as the warmth of her tears quickly soaked through my shirt. I held her, feeling the trembling of her frail back, gently patting her as she cried. It's okay. It's okay, I whispered, like soothing a child. If you can't have kids, it's not the end of the world. She shook her head in my arms, crying so much she couldn't even speak. Listen, Willow. I cupped her face, forcing her to look into my eyes, my tone serious. I'm here for you, not because you can have kids. Whether you can or can't, you're still you. I'm looking after you because you're Willow, the Willow who argued, fought, and divorced with me. Understand? She looked at me through teary eyes, her lips trembling. If the medication isn't working, we'll change it. We'll keep changing until it works. Don't worry about the money. I wiped away her tears, but it was like they couldn't be wiped away. As they kept coming, I continued. You're not useless. You're just sick, and when you're sick, you get treated. Understand? She looked at me, her despair slowly fading, replaced with a confused kind of dependence. Let's go home. I helped her up, picked up the bag on the floor, and put my arm around her shoulder as we walked toward the car. She leaned on me, her steps unsteady, but she wasn't crying anymore, just softly sniffling. I helped her into the passenger seat and fastened her seatbelt. She tilted her head, staring at the flowing river outside the window, her eyes still empty but with a little more life than before. I started the car and turned on the heater. The car was quiet, only interrupted by her occasional, suppressed sobs. After a while, I reached out and gently held her cold hand resting on her lap. Her fingers trembled but didn't pull away. I gripped it a little tighter. Looking at the road ahead, I said, for your follow-ups, I'll go with you. She didn't reply. A long time passed, so long that I thought she might have fallen asleep, before I heard her barely audible mm. In the palm of my hand, her cold fingers gently returned the grip. Chapter 14. Her hand was small and cold, slightly curled in my palm, like a startled little bird. I didn't dare hold it tightly. I just loosely encircled it. The car's heater was blasting, and she kept her head tilted, staring out the window, occasionally sniffling. I didn't speak, focusing on driving, but in the corner of my eye, her quiet profile was all I could see. When we reached the building, I parked the car but didn't immediately unbuckle my seatbelt. Still feeling unwell? I asked. She shook her head, her voice still hoarse. Much better. And the medicine? Let's talk about it tomorrow. She interrupted softly, her voice carrying a weariness that came from accepting things. I don't want to think about it today. I didn't press her. All right, then let's go upstairs and get some rest. She nodded and started to unbuckle her seatbelt. Her fingers seemed less cold now. I watched her head upstairs. The light in her third-floor window turned on, and only then did I let out a breath and drive away. The next day was Saturday. I didn't go over early like I usually did. By almost noon, I bought some groceries and headed over. I knocked on the door, and she opened it quickly. She was wearing loungewear, her hair casually tied up, looking a little pale, but the emptiness in her eyes had lessened. What are you doing here? She asked, stepping aside to let me in. Improving the menu. I lifted the plastic bag in my hand. Takeout's not good every day. The apartment was tidier than usual, the floor clean, and it seemed like she'd cleaned up the things that had broken yesterday. The fat cat came over, sniffing the bag in my hand. She watched me take out fish, meat, and vegetables, a little dazed. You can cook. Who are you looking down on? I glanced at her. Didn't we eat hot pot at home a lot before? Who made the broth? It seemed like she remembered something, and the corners of her mouth twitched slightly before she quickly suppressed it. Oh, I didn't tease her anymore. I tied on the apron, the one she'd left behind, a little old but clean, and began preparing the fish. She stood at the kitchen door, watching me as I systematically scaled the fish, gutted it, and rinsed it. Her gaze was a little complicated. "What are you standing there for?" I didn't look back. "If you're not busy, wash the rice. The rice cooker's over there." She responded with a quiet, "Oh," and awkwardly started washing the rice. Her movements were a bit clumsy, water splashing everywhere. I didn't point it out, letting her do it her way. The kitchen was small, and with both of us crowded inside, our elbows occasionally bumped. The faint scent of medicine mixed with shampoo drifted into my nose. She didn't say much, but she didn't avoid me either. She quietly passed me a plate or bowl when I needed it. Oil sizzled in the pan as I added ginger and garlic, then laid the fish in, frying it until golden on both sides. I added water and let it simmer. The steam filled the air with a rich, fragrant aroma. I also stir-fried some vegetables and made a tomato and egg soup. A simple meal. We set the table, sitting across from each other. She sipped the fish soup in small, measured sips, her eyes narrowing slightly. "How is it?" I asked. "It's good," she said quietly, adding another piece of fish to her plate. That meant it was very good. I knew her well. After we finished, she took the initiative to wash the dishes. I leaned against the kitchen doorway, watching her. The sound of running water filled the room as she washed carefully, her profile looking softer than it had in recent weeks. When she finished, she dried her hands and hesitated before turning to look at me. "Thank you." "Thank me for what?" "It's just a meal." I waved my hand. She pressed her lips together and didn't say anything further. She walked over to the table, picked up the medicine bottle, and poured out the dose for the day, swallowing it with warm water without waiting for me to watch. Then, as if remembering something, she pulled a crumpled piece of paper from her old canvas bag and handed it to me. It was a new prescription from the doctor, along with an appointment card for psychological counseling next Wednesday afternoon. "The doctor recommended it," she said softly, her fingers unconsciously picking at the edge of the appointment card. "She said, if I cooperate with the treatment, it might work better." I took the prescription and the card, feeling like something inside me settled lightly. She showed this to me on her own, which meant that she was no longer completely excluding me from her world. I carefully folded the paper and placed it in my wallet. "I'll go with you next Wednesday." She didn't object, giving a small nod. The afternoon sun was nice, shining through the slightly drafty window and casting dappled shadows on the floor. She was curled up on the sofa with the cat, absently stroking its belly. The cat purred happily. I sat in the chair beside her, handling the backlog of work emails on my phone. Occasionally, I'd glance up at her. She seemed a little tired, her head nodding slightly. The sunlight warmed her face, and I could see the tiny hairs on her skin. It was quiet, almost surreal. It felt like none of the arguments, the divorce, or the hurt had ever happened, like we were simply spending a regular weekend, in our regular home. Of course, I knew that wasn't true. The cracks were still there, and the wounds in her heart hadn't healed. But at least, for now, the sunlight was warm, the fish soup was finished, and she'd taken her medicine. The fat cat jumped down from her lap, stretched lazily, and came over to me. It hopped onto my lap, finding a comfortable position and curling up. I paused for a moment, looking down at the familiar creature. Willow saw it too. She didn't say anything, but the faintest curve appeared at the corner of her mouth. It was gone in an instant, and she pretended to look out the window, but I saw it. I scratched the cat's chin, and it purred even louder. All right. It seemed like the iceberg was really starting to melt, slowly, but it was melting. Chapter 15. On Wednesday afternoon, I left the office early and drove to the bottom of the building in Jianxi New Village to wait. It wasn't long before Willow came down. She was wearing a plain sweater with a coat over it, her hair neatly styled, but her face still had a hint of exhaustion. When she saw my car, she paused for a moment before walking over and opening the passenger door. "You didn't really have to come," she said softly as she buckled her seatbelt. I started the car. "It's on the way." She didn't say anything else and turned her head to look out the window. The counseling office was in a quiet office building, decorated warmly with a faint aroma of essential oils in the air. The receptionist kindly asked her to fill out some forms. She gripped the pen tightly. I sat on the sofa nearby, flipping through an expired magazine, not looking at her. When the receptionist called her name, she stood up and followed her into a counseling room at the end of the hallway. Before the door closed, she glanced back at me, her eyes a little panicked, like a child going to kindergarten for the first time. I nodded slightly at her, signaling, "It's okay, go ahead." The door closed. I was the only one left in the waiting area. I couldn't focus on the magazine anymore, and the ticking of the second hand on the wall clock was annoyingly loud. I stood up, walked to the window, and looked outside. The traffic below was heavy, and everyone seemed busy, headed somewhere. I wondered what she was doing inside. Was she crying? Was she remembering all those painful things? It felt like I waited a century, but finally, the counseling room door opened. Willow walked out, her eyes a little red, but her expression seemed slightly more relaxed, less tense than before. The counselor, a calm-looking middle-aged woman, followed her, glancing at me and giving a slight nod. I went to the front desk to pay. The cost was steep, so I didn't say a word about it. We went downstairs together and got in the elevator without speaking. It wasn't until we were in the car that I asked, "How do you feel?" She stared ahead, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of her seatbelt. "It's the same," I said a lot, but it didn't help. "First time. Take it slow." I tried to sound casual. The doctor seemed okay. She didn't respond. After we drove for a while and stopped at a red light, she suddenly spoke, her voice very soft. I told her about my parents. I was taken aback. Turning to look at her, she still stared straight ahead, her profile a little stiff. I told her about how my dad left. I told her where my mom is. Her voice was a little distant, like she was talking about someone else. I told her how, when I was a kid, they'd always fight, throw things. When my mom was sick, it was scary. The green light turned on. I slowly pressed the accelerator, not interrupting her. The doctor said I'm always afraid of burdening others, afraid of being abandoned. Because of that, she sniffled and turned her head toward the window. Said I've just gotten used to it. My heart felt like it was being pricked by tiny needles. So that armor of hers, that reckless stubbornness, had been carved into her since she was so small, piece by piece. "It's all in the past," I said, my voice a little hoarse. "It's not past," she immediately retorted, her voice barely holding back a sob. "It's all in my head. I can't forget." I couldn't respond to that. Some wounds, though the scars have healed, still hurt from within. When we got downstairs, I didn't rush to let her out of the car. "Willow," I called her name. "You see, you didn't burden me. I didn't leave you." She turned to look at me, her eyes misty, a little confused. "I never will," I added, my words a bit stiff, but sincere enough. She looked at me for a long time, then very lightly nodded her head. Just that one word, but I felt like it carried more weight than all the thank yous and sorries combined. She opened the door and got out of the car, then stopped after taking a couple of steps and looked back at me. "You want to come up for some water?" I was taken aback the first time she spoke, asking me to come up and sit, not in the usual context of bringing food or medicine. "Sure." I turned off the engine. I followed her upstairs and into the apartment. The fat cat meowed as it came to greet us. She poured me a glass of water, plain water. I took it from her and had a sip. We both sat in silence for a moment. It was a bit awkward, but not painfully so. She walked over to the balcony and looked at the golden pothos. The new shoots had grown a little more, still weak, but it was definitely alive. "It seems like it's come back to life," she said softly, almost to herself. It's tough," I replied. She didn't turn around, but her shoulders seemed to relax a little. I sat there for about 10 minutes, finished the water, and then stood up to leave. She walked me to the door. "When's the next session?" I asked, referring to the therapy. "Next Wednesday," she answered. "I'll go with you." She didn't object. I went downstairs and walked to the car, not immediately getting in. I looked up at the third-floor window. She was standing on the balcony, looking down at the golden pothos. She didn't look at me, but for some reason, I felt a little more at ease. The cracks were still there, but it seemed like, maybe, light was starting to seep in, slowly, but at least it was moving forward. Chapter 16. Days passed, slowly, like a snail crawling, but still moving forward. Every Wednesday afternoon became a fixed routine. I accompanied Willow to the therapy sessions. She went in, and I waited outside. Sometimes, when she came out, her eyes were red. Other times, she just looked tired. I didn't ask too much. Occasionally, she'd tell me something, like how the doctor asked her to try journaling or analyze why she kept having the same nightmare. That golden pothos was completely revived now, with fresh green leaves spreading out. Willow would occasionally water it, doing it gently. She still ate like a cat, but at least she could sit at the table and finish a meal with me. She talked a bit more, though most of the time, it was me asking questions and her answering. David called one day, making a lot of noise on the other end. "George, what's been keeping you busy? Can't find you at your usual time. Got a secret mistress hiding in your golden palace?" I looked at Willow, who was sitting on the balcony, petting the cat. I mumbled into the phone, "Yeah, something like that." "No way. Really? Who is it? Do I know them?" David got excited. "None of your business." I hung up. Willow looked at me. "Who was that?" I tucked my phone away. "David, just asking what I've been up to." She nodded slightly, then went back to petting the cat. Her ears seemed a little pink. The weather started to warm up, and the old tree outside the window began to sprout new buds. Another Wednesday, and after the session, Willow didn't seem as heavy. When we got in the car, she even said, "The doctor said I've been sleeping a little better recently." "That's a good thing." I started the car. "As long as you can sleep, it's good." Halfway there, waiting at a red light, I casually turned on the radio. An old song was playing, with a slow, calming tune. I hummed along quietly. There was no sound from her side. I glanced over and saw that Willow had fallen asleep against the car window. Her breathing was even, her brows relaxed, and her eyelashes softly resting. The sunlight filtered through the window, casting a glow on her face, and I could see the fine hairs on her skin. She hadn't slept this peacefully in a long time, at least, not in front of me. The light turned green, and the car behind honked impatiently. She didn't wake up. I gently eased off the gas, trying to keep the car smooth, and avoided the bumpy road we usually took. When we got to the building, I didn't hurry to wake her up. I sat in the car, listening to the song on the radio, watching her quiet sleeping face. A soft, warm feeling seemed to fill the space in my chest. After about 10 minutes, her eyelids fluttered, and she woke up. She looked around in confusion, realizing she was still in the car, and paused for a second before becoming a little flustered. I fell asleep. Why didn't you wake me when we got here? You looked so peaceful. I turned off the engine. Let's go. Time to head upstairs. She seemed a little embarrassed, brushed her disheveled hair, and followed me out of the car. Upstairs, we entered the apartment. The fat cat greeted us with its usual meow. She bent down to change her shoes, then paused for a moment before quietly saying, I haven't slept this soundly in a long time. Must be because I drive smoothly, I said playfully. She didn't argue. Instead, she smiled lightly, a real smile, with the corners of her mouth curling up into a clear arc, though it quickly disappeared again. But I saw it. That evening, I stayed over and ordered takeout. After we finished eating, she went to wash the dishes. I sat on the couch, petting the cat. When she finished washing the dishes and came out, drying her hands, she hesitated, then sat down on the other end of the couch. Not too far from me, not too close either. Neither of us said anything. The TV was on, blaring with a noisy variety show, but neither of us was really watching. There was a subtle kind of silence in the air, not awkward, but almost warm. The cat rolled over on my lap, exposing its belly. I scratched its tummy, my eyes still on the TV, but casually asked, So, how'd it go with the doctor this week? Any changes? Same time next week, she answered softly, her fingers unconsciously fiddling with a loose thread on the couch cover. Okay, I replied, feeling the quiet stretch again. There was nothing more to say. The show went into an ad break, the noise escalating even further. I cleared my throat, feeling a bit dry. How about we go see a movie this weekend? There's a new one out. Heard it's pretty good. As soon as the words left my mouth, I regretted them. Was that too sudden? Would I scare her off? Her fingers stopped moving. She didn't respond right away. I waited a few seconds, my confidence starting to waver, ready to backpedal and say, never mind, forget it, when I barely heard her reply in a soft voice. Okay. Her voice was just a little louder, but still quiet. Her head lowered so I couldn't see her expression. My heart skipped a beat. It felt like a stone dropped to the ground, but also like something light floated up in the air. All right, then, I said, trying to sound casual. Saturday afternoon. The ad break ended, and the show picked back up, louder than before, but it didn't seem as annoying now. She got up, saying, I'll get you a glass of water. Oh, sure, I said, watching her hurriedly move to the kitchen. I leaned back on the couch, continuing to pet the cat. It purred contentedly. Outside the window, the sky had completely darkened, but the streetlights below glowed warmly, casting a soft yellow light. The ice was melting, slowly, but it seemed like spring was finally, really, on its way. Chapter 17. On that Saturday, I woke up early, even more energetic than when I go to work. While shaving, my hands were shaking, and I almost cut myself. I drove to pick her up, and even waiting at red lights felt slow. When I got to her building, I sent her a message, I'm here. No reply. After 5 minutes, I sent another message, no rush, take your time. Another 10 minutes passed, and she finally replied, coming soon. That coming soon was probably another 15 minutes before I saw her coming out from the building door. She was wearing a light-colored dress with a knitted cardigan over it. Her hair seemed carefully styled, and she had a little makeup on, making her look less pale. She was holding a small bag, nervously twisting its strap with her fingers. I got out of the car and opened the passenger door for her. She lowered her head and sat in, softly saying, Sorry, I'm a bit late. It's fine. I just got here too. I lied without batting an eye. We drove toward the mall. The ride was quiet. I didn't pay attention to the song playing on the radio. My peripheral vision kept glancing at her. She was staring out the window, her side profile soft and graceful. By the way, I bought the movie tickets online. I tried to make small talk. She replied. Do you want sweet or salty popcorn? Either is fine. Great. I managed to kill the conversation again. When we reached the mall, there were quite a few people. I went to pick up the tickets while she stood to the side, looking at the poster wall. I got the tickets, and there was still some time before the movie started. I asked, Do you want some milk tea or juice? She shook her head and said, Just water is fine. I went to buy 2 bottles of water. When I handed her one, Our fingers brushed, and hers felt cold. She quickly pulled her hand away. After checking our tickets, we entered the theater and found our seats. The lights dimmed, and the opening credits began. The movie was a romance, a bit shallow. My mind wasn't on the screen at all. It was all on the person sitting beside me. She was watching the movie attentively, her eyes fixed on the screen, the light and shadows playing on her face. Occasionally, when something funny happened, she'd let out a soft laugh, the corners of her mouth curving upward. Halfway through, the male and female leads got into a fight due to a misunderstanding, and it got pretty intense. I heard her sniffle. I turned to look, and her eyes were bright, with tears sliding down her face. She quickly wiped them away with the back of her hand. Flustered, as if afraid I might see, I pretended not to notice, turning back to the screen, but inside, it felt like a soft scratch from a cat's paw. When we left the theater, her eyes were still a bit red, and she seemed too shy to look at me. Not bad. This movie, I said. She nodded. Are you hungry? Want to grab a bite? She hesitated for a moment and said, I don't want anything too greasy. Then how about Cantonese food? It's light. Okay. During the meal, we talked a bit more. Mostly it was her, commenting on the movie's plot, saying which parts were touching, which parts felt fake. I listened, occasionally adding a word or two. When she spoke, there was a faint light in her eyes, weak, but so much better than the lifeless look she had before. After dinner, the sky hadn't fully darkened yet. In front of the mall, there was a small square with lots of kids riding scooters. We walked side by side, without any particular destination, keeping half a person's distance between us. Today, thanks, she suddenly said. Thanks for what? It was just a movie. She didn't respond. When we reached the edge of the square, there was a vendor selling helium balloons, a bunch of them floating in bright colors. She stopped, looking at them, her gaze drifting as if lost in memory. When I was little, she said softly, almost to herself, I always wanted one, but my dad never bought me any. He said it was a waste of money, and besides, they'd just fly away. I watched her side profile without saying a word. She pulled her gaze back, gave a faint, bitter smile, and said, let's go. But I didn't move. I walked over, picked out the sturdiest looking one, a bright yellow bear balloon, and scanned to pay. Then I put the thin string into her hand. She froze, staring down at the balloon floating in her hand, then looked up at me, eyes wide in surprise, as if she hadn't expected it. I said, hold it. It won't fly away. She gripped the string, her fingers trembling slightly, the bright yellow glow reflected in her eyes, as though it swept away some of the shadows inside. She didn't say anything. She just kept staring at the balloon for a long time. Then, ever so faintly, she pressed her lips together and smiled. Not the fleeting kind from before, but a clear smile that lingered at the corners of her mouth, with a trace of shyness, and just a little, unhidden joy. On the way back, she tied the balloon to the passenger seat's armrest. That bright yellow bear swayed gently inside the car, a little silly, but somehow warm. At a red light, I turned my head to look at her. She was gazing out the window, that faint curve at her lips not quite gone. Something stirred inside me, like the brush of a feather. Willow, I called. She turned back, her eyes still carrying that subtle smile. From now on, I tapped my fingers on the steering wheel, looking ahead. Let's go out to the movies every week. She didn't answer immediately. The light turned green. I released the brake. As the car slowly moved forward, I heard her voice, soft, but crystal clear. Okay. Chapter 18. The bright yellow bear balloon swayed on the passenger seat the entire way, like a silly beacon. When I pulled up downstairs and parked, she unbuckled her seatbelt. Her fingers brushed against the balloon string. She hesitated for a moment, but didn't take it down. Hold on to it, I said. You can keep it at home, just for fun. She shook her head, but still untied the string, holding it in her hand. It's too big. It'll crowd the room. Fine. She pushed open the door, getting out with the balloon still floating in her hand, waiting for me by the side of the road. The night breeze lifted her skirt and hair, and the streetlights stretched her shadow long. I locked the car and walked over to her. Let's go up. She nodded but didn't move, gazing up at the balloon. Then, suddenly, she said something without context. I had a really good time today. I was momentarily taken aback. Hearing those words from her felt unfamiliar, and yet, it tugged at my heart. As long as you're happy, I said, trying to sound casual. Next time, we can pick another movie. She responded, lowering her head, and that faint curve returned to the corner of her mouth. We went upstairs together. The hallway was still dark, but this time she didn't hunch her shoulders or rush ahead like before. Her steps were a little lighter. At the door, she took out her key to unlock it. The fat cat meowed as it came to greet her, but when it saw the floating balloon, it jumped back in surprise, arching its back and hissing. She smiled and tied the balloon string to the top of the cat tree. The silly cat sat below, watching the yellow bear float back and forth, both cautious and curious. Stupid Ginger, she muttered under her breath, but there was a rare hint of relaxation in her voice. I stood at the door, not entering, and said, "Well, should I go?" She turned to face me, as though she wanted to say something but held it back. Finally, she just nodded and said, Be careful on the road. Did you take your medicine?" I asked, not being able to resist. "I did," she replied quickly. "Good." I turned and started heading down the stairs. "George," she called after me. I turned back. She was standing in the shadow cast by the doorframe, her fingers nervously twisting together. Her voice was lower than before. "Next time, I'll treat you." I raised an eyebrow. "Treat me to what? Movie tickets or dinner?" Her voice dropped even more, but she didn't avoid my gaze. "I can't always let you pay." A warmth spread in my chest again. "All right, I'll wait for you to get your paycheck." She seemed to relax, letting out a soft I made my way downstairs, my steps lighter than before. When I reached the car, I didn't immediately get in. I leaned against the door and lit a cigarette. I glanced up at her third-floor window. The light was still on, and the bright yellow balloon swayed slightly by the window. I exhaled a puff of smoke and smiled. Damn, it was worth it. The next few days passed like normal. I brought her food and medicine. She'd occasionally complain. More fish again, but still ate it all. When she went to her therapy sessions, she came out looking a little more relaxed each time. Sometimes on weekends, we really did go see a movie, or we just walked along the river park. There wasn't much talking, but the suffocating silence was less frequent. She even once bought a roasted sweet potato at the park entrance and shared half with me. Everything seemed to be sliding in a good direction, until that one evening, when I finished working late and went over, only to find that something was wrong with her. It took a long time for the door to open when I knocked. She was in her pajamas, her hair a mess, and her eyes were badly swollen, looking like she'd been crying for a long time. The lights in the room were dim. Only a small desk lamp was on, casting everything in a soft, shadowy glow. "What's wrong?" My heart tightened. She shook her head, her voice hoarse. "It's nothing. I'm just a bit tired." She turned and walked into the room, her steps unsteady. I followed her inside and immediately smelled the faint scent of smoke in the air. She used to sneak a cigarette when she was upset, but she had quit a long time ago. On the table was the journal that her therapist had asked her to write in, with a pen thrown carelessly beside it. I glanced at it and saw a few lines of writing, blurred by tears. "I still can't do it. They're all gone. Why is it always me?" My heart skipped a beat. She collapsed onto the sofa, hugging her knees, burying her face in them, her shoulders starting to tremble slightly. The cat, uneasy, circled her feet. "Willow." I crouched down in front of her, gently touching her shoulder. She flinched violently but didn't look up. Her voice came out muffled, tinged with a despairing sob. "I'm useless, George. All those treatments didn't work. I'm still like this. Good for a while, bad for a while. I can't take it anymore." She was spiraling again. Every time her condition improved even a little, a deeper low and self-doubt seemed to follow, like a rebound effect. "What happened today?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. She shook her head, unwilling to speak. I picked up the journal, closed it, and set it aside. "Let's not look at this right now. Go wash your face first." "Okay." She didn't move or respond. Sighing, I went to the bathroom, wet a towel with hot water, and handed it to her. "Wipe your face." She didn't take it. I reluctantly took matters into my own hands and, a little clumsily, wiped the tears from her face. She froze for a moment but didn't pull away, allowing me to do it. Her eyes were closed, long lashes damp, like a broken doll. When I was done, I placed the towel aside. She remained in the same position, still and unmoving. I sat beside her without saying anything. I just stayed with her. Seconds and minutes passed. Outside, the traffic sounds began to thin. After a long while, she spoke in a barely audible voice, her words broken. "I saw my mom today." My heart skipped a beat. Wasn't her mom in a psychiatric hospital? The hospital called, said she wanted to see me. She inhaled deeply, trying to hold back more tears. I went. She didn't recognize me. She was holding a pillow like a doll, calling me little sister. That's not my nickname. Her voice shook terribly. She grabbed my hand, said, "Little sister, don't be scared. Daddy doesn't want us. Mom will protect you." And then, she suddenly pushed me away, yelled at me, said it was all my fault. She couldn't continue, burying her face deep into her knees, sobbing quietly. I felt like a lump of soaked cotton was lodged in my chest, heavy, suffocating. So this was it. She had gone to face the woman who had brought half a lifetime of trauma, only to have old wounds reopened and even to be blamed without reason. Who the hell could endure that? I hesitated for a moment, then gently placed my hand on her trembling back. "It's not your fault," I said, my voice hoarse. "Your mom is sick, and what she said isn't true." She sobbed. "I know, but it hurts, George. It hurts here." She pressed her finger hard against her chest, where her heart was. I grabbed her hand, stopping her from hurting herself. "If it hurts, then cry it out. Don't hold it in." Finally, she stopped holding back, leaning into my shoulder as she cried out loud. Her tears soaked through my shirt, hot and burning. I held her, gently patting her back, letting her cry, just like when we were outside the hospital. But this time, she didn't push me away. I don't know how long she cried, but eventually, her sobs quieted, becoming intermittent sniffles. After releasing her emotions, it seemed to help a little, but she felt like an empty shell, leaning weakly against me, her eyes vacant as she stared at some point in the distance. Will I never get better? She whispered, her voice light as a feather. Will I be like my mom? No, I said firmly, holding her even tighter. You're not like her. You're trying. You're getting better. You just need time. She didn't answer, closing her eyes in exhaustion. If you're tired, sleep a little, I said. I'm here. She didn't protest, nor did she have the strength to. I helped her lie down on the bed and covered her with the blanket. She curled up on her side, a small child craving security. I pulled the chair over and sat beside the bed, keeping watch. Moonlight filtered through the window, shining on her face, the tear stains still visible. I knew this battle was far from over. Good days, bad days, back and forth, just like she said, but at least this time, during her worst moment, I was there. She didn't have to face it alone. That was enough. I leaned back in the chair, staring at the dark night outside the window. I'll wait. I've got all the time in the world. Chapter 19. Later that night, Willow must have cried herself to exhaustion, and with the emotional roller coaster, she fell asleep right there. Her breathing wasn't steady, her brows slightly furrowed, and occasionally, she would hiccup with a soft sob. I didn't dare leave. I spent the night in that broken chair. My back and waist ached, but my heart felt unusually calm. As dawn approached, I couldn't sit still anymore. I quietly got up, intending to make some porridge for her. She hadn't slept the entire night, and with the emotional upheaval, she needed something warm to eat. Just as I was rinsing the rice and putting it into the pot, I heard some movement in the bedroom. I peeked my head out and saw Willow sitting up, rubbing her eyes, staring dazedly at the faint light coming through the window. I lowered my voice. Are you awake? It's still early. Go back to sleep. She turned her head, saw me, and froze for a moment. Her gaze was empty, as if she hadn't fully recovered from last night's breakdown. You didn't leave. I nodded and walked back to the bed, gently touching her forehead. It wasn't hot. Do you feel unwell? Does your head hurt? She shook her head, her eyes drifting to the crumpled shirt I was wearing, the part that had been soaked with her tears last night, still damp. Her eyes flickered, and she looked away awkwardly. Sorry. Sorry for what? I asked deliberately. I got your clothes dirty. Her voice was barely a whisper. Anne, last night. It's fine. I interrupted her. The porridge will be ready soon. Go wash your face and feel better. She didn't move, her fingers nervously picking at the edge of the blanket. After a long pause, she said softly, Thank you. Thank you for what? I turned and walked toward the kitchen. It's nothing. The porridge bubbled away in the pot, the scent slowly filling the room. I stood at the stove, watching the steam rise, feeling an unexpected weight in my chest. Thank me. She should be thanking herself for holding on this long, for not giving up yet. She dawdled for a while, then finally got up to wash up. The sound of running water filled the silence. When she came out, her complexion had improved a little, though her eyes were still swollen. She silently walked over to the small table and sat down. I brought the porridge over and added a little side of pickled vegetables. Eat while it's hot. She took the spoon and ate slowly, not saying anything. The air was quiet, but not as tense as before. Halfway through, she suddenly set down her spoon and stared at the steam rising from the bowl. In a soft voice, she asked, Was I really embarrassing yesterday? Embarrassing? What are you talking about? I furrowed my brows. Everyone has moments when they feel bad. She pressed her lips together, not responding. After a while, she spoke again. The therapist told me before that allowing myself to be vulnerable is also part of the healing process. I nodded. She's right. Always holding everything in just makes things worse. She seemed to breathe a sigh of relief and took up her spoon again, finishing the rest of the porridge slowly. After breakfast, she washed the bowl herself. Then she stood by the balcony, staring at the golden pothos. I walked over and leaned against the doorframe. What are you looking at? It looks like it's grown a new leaf. She pointed at one of the tender green shoots. Yeah, it's pretty resilient. She was silent for a moment before suddenly saying, It's stronger than me. That's nonsense. I immediately retorted. You brought it back to life, and you've survived all this. You're much stronger than it. She turned to look at me, her eyes glistening with unshed tears, but this time, none fell. She smiled faintly, a little bitter and a little relieved. You're good at comforting me. I looked into her eyes and said, I'm serious. She didn't look away from my gaze, just stared at me. The sunlight streamed across her face, and I could see the fine hairs on her skin and the faint spark of something, a tiny flame, flickering deep within her eyes. After a while, she took a deep, steady breath, as if she had made up her mind about something. George, she called my name, her voice calm. Next month. I don't want to rent this place anymore. I was taken aback. What happened? Did the landlord cause trouble again? No. She shook her head, her gaze sweeping over the cramped little apartment. I just feel like it's time to move. This place isn't right. She didn't say what exactly was wrong, but I knew. This apartment was filled with memories she'd been bearing alone. It was her refuge during her most hopeless moments, but it was also the shell that trapped her. Okay, I immediately said. What kind of place are you looking for? I'll help you find it. But she shook her head. I'll find it myself. You just come with me to take a look. I looked at her, and her eyes were resolute, no longer filled with the confusion and dependency that used to be there. All right, I nodded. Wherever you like, I'll go with you. She seemed to relax, a very faint but genuine smile curving at the corners of her lips. That day, when I left, she didn't say thank you or sorry. She just stood at the door and said, drive carefully on the road. I went downstairs, got into the car, but didn't drive off immediately. I looked up at the third-floor window. She was standing on the balcony, holding a small spray bottle, carefully watering the golden pothos. Her movements were gentle, focused. The sunlight was perfect, enveloping her in a warm glow. The ice had melted for a long time, leaving a sting in the hands. But today, it seemed like I finally saw the hardest core beneath it. It had cracked open a small seam by itself. The light, damn, it was blinding. Chapter 20. House hunting turned out to be more troublesome than I expected. Willow seemed to be competing with herself, insisting on doing everything on her own. She scrolled through various rental apps, made phone calls, and clumsily communicated with agents. I sat by, listening and occasionally chiming in with things like, that area's a bit too chaotic, or this agent sounds unreliable. But she didn't get upset. She just insisted on filtering everything herself. On the weekend, she scheduled a few viewings, and I drove her around. The first one was a rundown place, worse than where she was living now, and the hallway smelled horrible. She walked around for a bit, and her brows didn't relax once. The second one looked newer, but the neighbors were renovating, and the drilling noise could probably blast your eardrums. The third one, the agent had hyped it up so much, but when we got there, it was half the size it was described as, and the balcony was so small she couldn't even turn around. By the end of the morning, we hadn't found anything worth looking at. She seemed deflated, sitting in the passenger seat, staring out the window without speaking. How about, I tried to suggest, I know a guy who works in property rental. Should I ask him to keep an eye out? She immediately shook her head. No, I'll keep looking. Her stubborn side came back, but I didn't feel frustrated like before. Instead, there was something indescribable about it. She was fighting with herself, with the person she used to be, the one who could only hide away and lick her wounds. All right, I nodded. How about we check out 2 more this afternoon? The first one in the afternoon was in a quieter neighborhood, on the 6th floor, with no elevator. Climbing up was exhausting. The apartment was clean enough, the sunlight nice, but the kitchen was ridiculously small. She stood in the middle of the living room, looking around, but didn't immediately say anything. The agent rambled on beside her. This place is in high demand. It's a great deal. If the landlord wasn't in such a rush, the price wouldn't be this low. She walked over to the balcony and looked outside. Below, a small garden had a few elderly ladies sunbathing. So, I asked. She hesitated for a moment before saying quietly, the floor's a bit high. Moving things might be a hassle. That meant she wasn't completely satisfied. The last one was further out from the city center, but it was a new development. The apartment was small, 1 bedroom, 1 living room, simply decorated and clean. The highlight was a large floor-to-ceiling window in the living room, with sunlight pouring in, making the whole place bright and blinding. She walked in and her eyes lit up for a second. She moved slowly through the space, her fingers tracing the smooth kitchen counters, checking out the clean bathroom, and finally stopping at the floor-to-ceiling window. The view outside was pretty good, with distant mountains in sight. This one's south-facing, lots of sunlight, and warm in the winter. The agent quickly added, the landlord's included air conditioning and a washing machine, ready for you to move in. She didn't say anything, just kept staring outside. I walked over and stood next to her. What do you think? After a moment of silence, she said softly, it's too expensive. The price the agent quoted was indeed higher than the others we'd seen. Sunlight's worth the price, I said. She turned to look at me, her gaze conflicted. She liked it, I could tell, but the price was clearly above her initial budget. Let's keep looking, she sighed, as if preparing to give up. Let's go with this one, I suddenly said. Both she and the agent were taken aback, looking at me. You. Willow started to speak. I turned to the agent and said, please tell the landlord we'll take it. It's 1 month deposit, 3 months in advance. Right, let's sign the contract now. Willow tugged at my sleeve, a bit frantic. George, it's too expensive. I'll pay half. I looked at her and said, consider it an investment in Sunshine stocks. The agent's eyes lit up immediately, and he pulled out the contract. No problem. Sir, the landlord's my relative. I can make decisions. Willow still wanted to say something, but I didn't give her a chance. I took the contract, quickly skimmed the terms, and signed it, transferring the payment. The agent walked away happily, leaving us in the empty, brand new apartment. Willow stood in the center of the living room, staring at the smooth floor and freshly painted walls, her expression dazed, as if she hadn't quite processed what had just happened. What are you staring at? I handed her the keys. Check if anything's missing. We'll go to the supermarket later. She took the keys, the cold metal resting in her palm. She looked up at me, her gaze complex. Why are you like this? Like what? Not even consulting me about it. Her voice trailed off, but there wasn't much reproach in it. If I had asked, you definitely wouldn't have agreed. I walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window. Look, it's so bright. Once that golden pothos is here, it'll thrive like crazy. She didn't respond, but she walked over to the window too, standing beside me. The sunlight warmed us both. She took a deep breath, slowly exhaling. The tension in her shoulders slowly faded away. It is pretty bright, she said quietly, her lips curving into a small, subtle smile. We didn't hire a moving company. She didn't have much stuff, just a few boxes, that increasingly healthy golden pothos, and the cat that seemed to be getting bigger by the day. I made 2 trips in the car, and soon, everything was moved. The new place was easy to clean. She insisted on doing it herself, so I just handled the heavy lifting, assembling the new wardrobe and bookshelf we bought. We spent the whole day setting up, and finally, the place started to feel like home. It was still empty, but it was bright, clean, and full of sunlight. For dinner, we ordered takeout and laid out a newspaper on the shiny floor to eat. The fat cat, excited in the new environment, ran around exploring its new territory. I took a bite of pizza and asked, "This place is better than the last one, right?" She nibbled on her salad, nodding. The windows are big. How's your mood? Feeling better?" She paused, looking out the window at the darkening sky lit by city lights, then glanced back at me, softly replying with a faint "Then it's worth it," I said. After we finished eating, she cleaned up the trash and went around wiping this surface and that. She couldn't seem to stop, almost as if she were trying to confirm that this new space really belonged to her. I leaned back on the brand new sofa, watching her move about, and suddenly called out, "Willow." She turned around. "Next time you see the doctor," I said, "tell them you moved to a place with good sunlight." Her movement stopped, and she stared at me, her eyes sparkling under the light. After a few seconds, she nodded. Okay. Chapter 21. Life in the new place seemed genuinely different. Sunlight poured in through the windows in large, golden pools, warming the floor beneath. That golden pothos looked as though it had been given a shot of adrenaline, its leaves gleaming a vibrant green, new shoots sprouting as it began to climb. The fat cat loved sprawling out in the sunspots, belly up, showing no sense of dignity. Willow was still the same, taking her medicine on time and visiting her therapist every week, but the tension between her brows seemed to have loosened a bit. She even bought a little radio, turning it on while cooking to listen to old songs that crackled through the air. Sometimes, on weekend afternoons, she'd curl up on the lounge chair by the floor-to-ceiling windows, holding the cat while reading or simply zoning out. The sunlight would turn her hair into a fuzzy golden halo, making her seem so warm and peaceful. I tried not to visit too often, not wanting to bother her, but every time I came over, I noticed small changes, like the 2 new pots of flowers on the balcony, or how the fridge started having fruit in it, or how she'd occasionally attempt to cook something new, even if it often went awry, salty and bitter or with a burnt bottom. Once, when I visited, she was staring glumly at a blackened pile of food in a pot. "What's this?" I asked. Her expression was defeated. "Coca-Cola chicken wings. I think I turned the heat up too high." I leaned over to take a look. "It's fine. You can scrape it off and still eat it." In the end, most of the charred wings ended up in my stomach. She sat across from me, a little embarrassed. "Next time, I won't try anything too difficult." "It's fine. They're really chewy," I said, casually gulping down half a glass of water. She chuckled softly, but quickly suppressed it, her eyes curving up in a way that made me feel at ease. It was nice, but I knew, illness isn't that easy to shake off. It's like a beast lurking in the shadows, ready to spring out and take a bite at any moment. That afternoon, I had an unexpected delay, and arrived 2 hours later than usual. I knocked on the door, but no one answered. A wave of unease washed over me, and I quickly fished out the spare key. She'd given it to me in case she ever locked herself out again. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The house was eerily quiet, and the lights weren't on. The setting sun cast half the living room in light, the other half dark. She wasn't in the living room or the bedroom. My heart picked up its pace. I pushed open the bathroom door. She was sitting on the cold tile floor, her back against the bathtub, curled up. Her head was buried in her knees, perfectly still. Next to her, the pill bottle was open, a few pills scattered on the ground. "Willow." I crouched down, instinctively softening my voice. afraid to startle her. She didn't respond. I gently touched her shoulder. She jolted, raising her head. Her face was covered in dried tears, her eyes swollen and red, staring at me with a hollow look. No focus. Her lips were cracked and dry. What happened? My chest tightened as I grasped her cold hand. Where do you feel sick? Did you take your medicine? She stared at me, her gaze slowly focusing, like she was only just realizing it was me. Her lips trembled a few times, but no sound came out. Then, without warning, the tears started to fall again. Big, heavy drops, flooding down her face. I don't want to take them anymore. Her voice was hoarse, thick with congestion and despair. It's useless. It doesn't work. I still feel terrible. She pulled her hand away and hugged her knees again, burying her face in them. Her shoulders began to tremble violently. There's a hole here. Nothing fills it. I can't breathe. She fell back into that black hole again, without warning, and completely unprepared. I didn't say anything, nor did I try to pull her up. I just sat next to her, leaning against the bathtub. The cold tile seeped through my pants, sending a chill up my legs. Then don't take it for now, I said softly. Rest for a bit. She cried harder, her sobs muffled and jagged, echoing in the cramped bathroom. I'm sorry. I'm like this again. I can't control it. It's okay. I reached out and gently placed my hand on her trembling back. If you want to cry, then cry. I'm here. She didn't push me away. Instead, it felt like she grasped onto something, and her crying became even more uncontrollable, as if she were trying to cry out every part of her being. I just sat there, gently patting her back. The sunset slowly shifted, the light sliding across us, until only the faintest twilight peeked through the window. I don't know how long it passed, but her sobs gradually subsided, turning into intermittent hiccup-like breaths, until only the sound of her tired breathing remained. She lifted her head, her eyes swollen like peaches, her face a mess. She looked at me, who was sitting on the floor beside her, her expression dazed and slightly embarrassed. The floor's cold, she said hoarsely. I didn't move. She fell silent for a moment, then very slowly, she leaned her head against my shoulder. Her weight was light, tentative, uncertain. I froze for a moment, then relaxed and didn't pull away. George, she whispered, her voice soft and drained from crying. Am I really useless? That's nonsense, I said, my gaze fixed on the blurred reflection on the opposite tiles. You can endure more than I can. She didn't speak, her breath brushing against my neck. After a while, she said faintly, almost imperceptibly, don't leave. I won't. I responded quickly. I'm staying right here. The night grew completely dark. The bathroom lights weren't on, and only the light from the living room filtered in through the door crack. We just sat there, leaning against the bathtub, on the cold tile floor. Neither of us said anything. Far off, I thought I heard the distant hum of traffic, but it might have been just my mind. Time seemed to stretch, or maybe it just froze, until her head, resting on my shoulder, became heavier, and her breathing evened out, long and deep, like she had fallen asleep. I shifted my stiff shoulders slightly, but she didn't wake up. She had cried herself to sleep. I carefully lifted her. She was light, almost weightless. I carried her to the bedroom, laid her on the bed, and tucked her in. She mumbled softly, turned over, and didn't wake up. I stood by the bed, watching her for a moment, then bent down to gather the scattered pills on the floor, placing them back in the bottle and sealing it before setting it on the bedside table. Afterward, I went to the kitchen and poured a glass of warm water, placing it next to the bed. Then I went back to the living room. Sitting on the sofa, I didn't turn on the lights, just sat in the moonlight and the glow from the streetlights outside. My phone lit up briefly. It was a message from David, asking if I wanted to play basketball tomorrow. I didn't reply. My mind was empty, yet somehow full of thoughts at the same time. I knew this might happen again. Without warning, she would fall apart, plunge into the depths, crying until her heart ripped apart, and then, slowly, she would claw her way back out, over and over again, like an endless tug of war. But at least this time, during her darkest moment, she wasn't alone. I leaned back on the sofa, closed my eyes, and I thought, I'll stay with you. Anyway, damn me, I'm stuck with you for this life. Chapter 22. The next morning, I woke up early, my back sore from sleeping on the sofa. The sky was just beginning to lighten, and the living room was completely quiet. I quietly walked to the bedroom door and opened it just a crack. Willow was still asleep, lying on her side. Her breathing was steady, and the marks from last night's tears had faded, though her eyelids were still swollen. I didn't wake her up, quietly closed the door, and went into the kitchen. There were eggs and toast left in the fridge. I fried the eggs until they were perfectly golden, but the toast got a little too crispy, though it smelled good. Just as I set the food on the small table, the bedroom door opened. Willow walked out in her pajamas, her hair messy, her eyes still a little bleary. She froze when she saw me. I tried to sound casual. Awake, breakfast is ready. She looked at the sad-looking fried eggs on the table without saying anything, then went to the bathroom to wash up. The sound of water running filled the silence. I felt a little anxious, not knowing how she was feeling today. When she came out, her face was washed, and her hair was neatly combed. She looked a little more awake. She walked over to the table, picked up a piece of slightly burnt toast, and took a small bite. It's a bit overdone. She picked up an egg, took a bite, and chewed slowly, not commenting on whether it was good or bad. The air was quiet, only the sound of chewing filling the space. Halfway through, she suddenly set down her utensils and looked out the window. The sunlight hadn't fully spread yet, and the sky was a clean, cool gray blue. She spoke, her voice still hoarse. Yesterday. Thank you. I frowned. Stop saying that. It's not thanking you for being with me. She turned back to face me, her eyes serious. It's thanking you for not getting annoyed with me. I was momentarily caught off guard, lowering my head to bite into the toast, not responding. My therapist said. She continued softly, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup. Allowing emotions to come back is part of the recovery process. Next time, I can try to tell you beforehand. I looked up at her. Her expression was calm, not self-blaming, more like she was stating a fact. I nodded. All right, next time, if you're feeling bad, just yell at me. Don't hold it in. She smiled lightly, very briefly. Why would I yell at you? I shrugged. To vent. I can take it. She laughed again, this time with a little more of a curve to her lips. You're such a fool. After we finished breakfast, she took the initiative to wash the dishes. I leaned against the kitchen doorframe, watching her. The water flowed over the dishes as she washed them carefully. Today, she turned off the faucet, dried her hands, and hesitated for a moment before speaking. Are you coming to the therapy session again? I know, I said, glancing at the calendar. I'll take you. She nodded, not refusing this time. On the way to the therapy session, Willow was quieter than usual. As we neared the office, she suddenly said, I want to talk about yesterday with the doctor. I focused on the road ahead. Go ahead. Say whatever you need to. She didn't say anything more. When we arrived, I did what I always did, waited outside. This time, I didn't read a magazine or play on my phone. I just sat there. The minutes stretched on, feeling longer than usual. Finally, the door opened. She stepped out, her eyes not red, her expression even a bit lighter than before. The therapist followed behind, smiling at me. We settled the bill and went downstairs. Once we were in the car, she didn't immediately buckle her seatbelt. Instead, she stared ahead, as if organizing her thoughts. What did the doctor say? I couldn't resist asking. She paused before responding. She said, occasional breakdowns are normal. What's important is what happens afterward. She hesitated, as if recalling the therapist's words. Afterward. How to put yourself back together. She turned to look at me, her eyes shining with something new, a faint, but determined spark. She said that this time, I pieced myself back together faster than before. Something in my chest shifted, gently but unmistakably. It was both soft and aching. That's because you've gotten stronger. I started the car. She didn't argue, the corner of her mouth lifting ever so slightly. The car merged into traffic. Sunlight filtered through the window, landing on her hand. She looked at her hand for a moment before softly saying, I want to reduce the dosage of my medication. My heart skipped a beat, and I glanced at her. The doctor agreed. She quickly added, as if afraid I'd disagree. She said I can try slowly. If it doesn't go well, I can always add more back. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel, then slowly loosened it. If you think it's okay, then it's okay. She nodded, her gaze shifting to the window. Her voice was light, but it clearly reached my ears. I want to try standing on her own, to see how long she can hold herself up. I didn't say anything. I simply reached out, placing my hand over hers, which rested on her lap. She flinched slightly, but didn't pull away. Her hand was cool, but it gradually warmed under mine. She didn't turn her head, still looking out the window. But then, gently, she reversed her hand and lightly gripped my fingers. A small gesture, yet it felt like something had quietly locked into place between us. The sunlight was blinding. I tightened my grip on her hand. All right, I said softly. Try it out. Chapter 23. The reduction in medication was slow, like ants moving a house. Willow still went to see the therapist every week. Sometimes she came back feeling light. Other times she was silent. But the kind of sudden, complete breakdown cry seemed to have lessened. She started trying other things. She signed up for an online painting class and bought a bunch of paints and sketchbooks. The corner of the living room was often covered with unfinished watercolor paintings, the colors bleeding out. Sometimes it looked like a sunset, sometimes like an inexplicable pool of blue. The paintings weren't particularly good, even a little childish, but she painted with great concentration, her brows slightly furrowed, her fingertips dyed with color when the brush dipped in water. Every time I went, she showed them to me. Does it look like clouds? Or, I messed up the color here. I usually couldn't tell what it looked like, but I always said, it's good. She'd shoot me a glance, but her mouth would curl up. One time when I went, she wasn't in the living room. The painting supplies were scattered on the floor, the sketchbook open to a crooked, stick figure-like drawing. Next to it, a small pencil note read, "The sun is nice today." I wasn't sad. I stared at the words for a long time, feeling my heart soften and twist, as if soaking in warm water. She came out of the bedroom, saw me looking, and seemed a bit flustered. She quickly walked over, closed the sketchbook, and said, "It's just some random drawing." I didn't call her out. "It's good. You have talent." Her ears turned red, and she shoved the sketchbook under a pile of paper, asking, "What's for dinner?" I bought fish. The fish she made still tended to overcook, but at least it wasn't burnt anymore. Days passed, calm like a cup of plain water, but without scratching the throat. Then came that day when I accompanied her to her follow-up appointment. The doctor spoke with her for longer than usual. I sat outside, feeling a bit uneasy. The door finally opened. Willow stepped out, her face expressionless, but her eyes were unnervingly bright. The therapist followed her out, smiled and nodded at me, and said nothing more. We went downstairs and got into the car. She remained silent, her movements slow when she buckled up, like she was still lost in thought. "What's wrong?" I couldn't help asking. "What did the doctor say?" She turned to look at me, her eyes complicated. There was relief, uncertainty, and a little bit of a dazed sense of release. "The doctor said." She took a breath, her voice light but every word clear, "I can consider slowly tapering off the medication." My hand tightened on the steering wheel. My heart felt like it was suddenly yanked up, then gently set back down. "Really?" I heard my voice come out dry. She nodded, her fingers subconsciously picking at the edge of her seatbelt. She said, "My emotions have been stable recently, and my cognitive patterns have changed a lot. I can try to regulate things more naturally now. Of course, it needs to be very slow, very careful, and constantly monitored." I didn't catch the rest of what she said. My mind was buzzing. The only thing echoing over and over was that word, tapering off. Those bitter pills, which had been clinging to her like a parasite for so long, were finally something she could try to let go of. I turned to look at her. She was looking at me too, her eyes sparkling like they were full of water or sunlight. "That's great," I heard myself say, my voice a little unsteady. "A huge blessing." She looked at me and suddenly smiled. Not the fleeting, bittersweet smile from before, but a clear, bright smile. Her mouth curving up, her eyes squinting, her whole face lighting up. She nodded again, but tears rolled down her cheeks without warning. She quickly wiped her tears with the back of her hand, but it only made them worse. Still, her lips were lifted in a smile. "I just didn't expect it." I reached out and firmly held her cold fingers. "You should have expected it. You're amazing." She gripped my hand in return, holding it tightly, as if it were her only anchor. Tears still fell, but her face was all smiles, crying and laughing, like a fool. I smiled too, and the tension in my chest slowly melted, turning into something warm and solid, filling me from head to toe. That night, we didn't cook. We went to a restaurant she used to love. Her appetite seemed to have improved a bit. She ate a whole bowl of rice and drank quite a bit of soup. After dinner, we took a walk along the riverbank. The evening breeze was soft and carried a bit of moisture, but it wasn't cold. She walked beside me, her steps light and quick. She gazed at the lights reflecting on the river and suddenly said, "Actually, I'm still a little scared. What if it doesn't work out again? If it doesn't work out, we'll just add the medication back." I said, "We've already walked this road once, so why be afraid to walk it again? I'll be with you." She stopped, turned to look at me. The lights by the river flickered on her face. "George," she said my name softly, her voice scattered by the wind. "Thank you so much for these past few months." I didn't reply, just looked at her. "If it weren't for you." She paused, lowering her head, her voice even quieter. "I might really have just." "There's no if it weren't for you," I interrupted, raising my hand to gently wipe away the dampness at the corner of her eye. "It's all you. You carried through on your own." She lifted her head, her eyes red but not crying. She just stared at me for a long time. The sound of a boat's horn echoed across the river. Then, she moved ever so slightly closer. A quick, light touch landed on the corner of my lips, carrying a bit of warmth, a bit of moisture, and the sweet taste of the sweet and sour ribs we had for dinner. It was over almost as soon as it started. She immediately stepped back, her face turning bright red. Even her ears were burning. Her gaze darted around, unable to meet mine. "Should we head back? It's getting a little cold." I stood there frozen, the skin on the corner of my mouth tingling, as if it had been brushed by a feather. My heart felt like it had exploded into a small firework, crackling away. Okay. I heard my voice crack a little. On the way back, neither of us spoke. The car seemed to be on mute. She kept her head turned to the window, but I could see her cheek and neck, still flushed. We were almost downstairs, waiting for the last red light. I turned to look at her glowing earlobes. "Willow." I called her name. Her body stiffened for a moment. Then she slowly turned around, her eyes flickering, like a child caught doing something wrong. I looked into her eyes. What did that mean? Her face turned even redder, Her fingers twisted together. Her lips moved but no words came out. The light turned green. I didn't rush her, released the brake, and the car slowly glided through the intersection. I drove all the way downstairs and parked. I took out the key but didn't unlock the car door. The car fell into complete silence. The only sound was our breathing. She took a deep breath, as if gathering all her courage, and turned to face me. Her face was still burning, but her eyes didn't look away. Her voice trembled, but it was clear. It meant exactly that. I stared at her for several seconds before reaching out, gently brushing my thumb across her burning cheek. Her eyelashes fluttered slightly, but she didn't pull away. I leaned in slowly and kissed her. It lasted just a little longer than the previous touch. I could taste the lingering sweetness of her lips, and feel her shaky, tentative response. When we pulled away, we were both slightly out of breath, foreheads resting against each other. Her eyes were wet, impossibly bright. I got it, I whispered, my thumb grazing her burning bottom lip. She didn't speak, but buried her flushed face in my shoulder. Chapter 24. Since that kiss, Willow moved back in to live with me. Along with her came the golden pothos and the fat cat. Life seemed to finally be back on track, so smooth it almost felt unreal. That was until one day, when the doorbell suddenly rang. Willow and I were lounging on the couch, watching a noisy variety show. She was holding the cat, and I had the remote control in my hand. When we heard the doorbell, we both froze. I don't usually have visitors, except for deliveries and takeout. Did you order something? I asked. Willow shook her head. I got up to answer the door, and the cat jumped out of her arms. When I opened the door, I was stunned. Standing outside was my mother, holding a large eco-friendly bag, rushing around as usual. Mom. My heart sank, and I instinctively tried to block the door. What are you doing here? Didn't even give me a call first. Call what? To check on you. My mom shot me a glance and, out of habit, tried to squeeze her way in. Brought some of your dad's beef jerky for you. Thought I'd come by and see what kind of mess your place has turned into. Her words cut off, and her movements froze mid-step. Her eyes shifted past my shoulder, locking onto the person standing up from the couch in the living room. Willow was clearly caught off guard too, standing there at a loss for what to do. The noise from the variety show still blared in the background, making everything feel even more out of place. The air became heavy with silence for a few seconds. My mom's expression changed rapidly, like a spinning carousel, from confusion to shock, then to a complicated realization, and finally to a deep, unreadable look. She tightened her grip on the bag, her gaze scanning across my face, then landing back on Willow. Mom. No. Auntie. Willow spoke up first, her voice trembling, fingers unconsciously twisting the hem of her shirt. The word auntie cut through the stillness like a needle, breaking the tense silence. My mom took a deep breath, as if she was trying to regain her composure, but her voice came out dry, no longer as sharp as usual. Willow. Mom. Let's go inside and talk. I stepped aside to let her in, my mind a tangled mess. Finally, my mom took a step forward, but her eyes never left Willow. She placed the bag on the hallway cabinet, her movements slower than usual. Willow stood there, her face pale, like she'd been pushed into the spotlight, uncertain of what to do. I walked over, turned down the TV volume, and instinctively stood a little closer to Willow. This subtle movement seemed to catch my mom's attention, and her gaze flickered for a moment. Auntie, please sit. Willow found some semblance of calm, gesturing toward the sofa. I'll get you a glass of water. She almost fled to the kitchen, walking quickly. My mom sat down on the sofa, her back stiff, not looking at me or speaking, her eyes deeply focused on the direction of the kitchen. I scratched my head and sat down beside her. Mom, don't what? My mom turned her face towards me, her eyes sharp, lowering her voice. George, what's going on? You two, are you tangled up together again? The word again carried a heavy weight. Mom, it's not tangled up. I tried to explain. She wasn't doing well before. When I met her, I just what? Just softened your heart, or couldn't let go. My mom interrupted, her tone urgent, but she quickly reined it in. George, I'm not saying she's a bad person, but you two, the way things were before, the way you split up so badly. Don't you remember how you were back then? I hadn't forgotten. Those days felt like I was walking around as a zombie, and my mom saw it all. Mom, it's different now. I tried to make her understand. She was sick then. She didn't even know it. Sick. My mom froze for a second, her brow furrowing. What kind of sickness? At that moment, Willow came out with a cup of water. She must have heard the last few words. Her footsteps faltered, and her face paled a little. She placed the cup gently on the coffee table in front of my mom. Auntie, here's some water. My mom looked at the cup, then glanced back at Willow. Her sharp gaze softened slightly, and there was a hint of scrutiny and an unspoken concern. Thank you. Please, sit down. Willow carefully sat down on the armchair next to me, her gaze lowered. You said she was sick. What's going on? My mom turned to me, Her tone softened but still serious. I looked at Willow, who gently bit her lip but didn't protest. I briefly explained the situation, not going into details, just saying it was an emotional issue that hadn't been noticed before, affecting her life, but she was getting better now. My mom listened quietly, not interrupting, her face growing more serious as she absorbed the information. Her gaze shifted back to Willow, becoming more complicated, mixed with surprise, realization, and a trace of sympathy. After I finished, the room fell silent again. Only the awkward background laughter from the variety show played on. It took a long while before my mom let out a heavy sigh, a sigh full of meaning. She picked up the water cup, took a sip, then set it back down. You, child. She looked at Willow, her voice heavy. How could you not tell me something this important? If I'd known back then. Willow lifted her head, her eyes reddened, and she shook her head. Auntie, I'm sorry. I didn't understand it myself back then. I just felt really awful, like I didn't deserve him. I'd just drag him down. So, she chose to leave, to hide and bear it all alone. My mom stared at her for a long time, her expression softening little by little. She sighed again, this time with more helplessness and pity. Silly girl, what's so difficult to get through? Why did you have to carry it all by yourself? Tears fell from Willow's eyes, and she quickly turned her head to wipe them away. My mom pulled out a tissue and handed it to her. All right, stop crying, you're better now. That's what matters. It felt like a pardon. Willow took the tissue, choking out a thank you, Auntie. My mom then turned her gaze to me, a bit of warning in her eyes, but more resignation than anything. And you, this is a huge deal, and now you're telling me, don't you even think about me anymore? I didn't want you to worry, I mumbled awkwardly. Now you're not worried. My mom shot me a look but softened her tone. What are your plans? Is this for real? Not just a moment of impulse because you felt sorry for her? Mom, I raised my voice a little. Willow looked over, clearly nervous. My mom looked at us both, then suddenly smiled. A smile full of mixed feelings and some relief. All right, with the way you two are acting. I'm too lazy to interfere anymore. You're both adults now, so decide for yourselves. She stood up. The beef is in the bag. Put it in the fridge. I'm leaving. Mom, stay for a bit. I stood up too. Stay, to watch you two be all lovey-dovey. She waved her hand and glanced at Willow. Willow, when you have time, come over for dinner. Your uncle's been asking about you. Willow froze, her eyes watering again, but she nodded deeply. Okay, Auntie. I walked her to the door, and as she put on her shoes, she leaned in and lowered her voice. Take good care of her. This girl, she's been through a lot. Don't screw things up again. I know. I nodded. My mom left. As I closed the door, I leaned against it and sighed deeply. Turning around, I saw Willow still standing in the middle of the living room, holding the tissue, her eyes red as she looked at me. You scared me to death, she whispered, a mix of fear and relief in her voice. I walked over and hugged her. It's okay now, my mom. Actually, she's always liked you. She nodded softly in my arms, wrapping her arms tightly around my waist. Chapter 25. As autumn settled in and the weather grew cooler, the house still felt warm when the sun was shining. The golden pothos had grown wildly, its vines crawling halfway across the balcony, so green it almost hurt the eyes. Willow was trimming the overgrown leaves with a small pair of scissors, cutting off the excess branches and sticking them in a water bottle, saying she wanted to see if they could survive. Lately, she had been acting a bit strange. She was easily fatigued, and her appetite wasn't great. In the mornings, she'd sometimes frown and rush to the bathroom to dry heave, returning pale-faced. Did you catch a cold? I asked, a little concerned, reaching to touch her forehead. Or did you eat something bad? She swatted my hand away and shook her head. Maybe it's just the season change. My stomach's been upset. Then she slouched back on the couch, hugging a cushion, looking drained. I thought it might be another sign of emotional ups and downs, so I became a little more cautious and watched her for several days. But aside from being a little lazier and having less of an appetite, her mood remained steady, even calmer than usual. She slept well at night, though in the mornings, it was hard for her to wake up. Days passed, and her nausea seemed to worsen, becoming more frequent. I grew increasingly worried and insisted on taking her to the hospital. I'm fine, she said, lying on the couch and not wanting to get up. It's just my stomach. I'll rest, and it'll be better. No, we're going to see a doctor, I insisted, my tone firm. I won't be able to focus if I'm constantly worrying about you. She gave in reluctantly, getting up slowly to change her clothes. On the way to the hospital, she kept staring out the window, her fingers nervously fiddling with the edge of her seatbelt. She was uncharacteristically quiet. We saw a gastroenterologist. After a routine checkup and some questions about her symptoms, the doctor gave us a referral for blood tests. While waiting for the results, we sat on the cold plastic chairs in the hospital. She leaned against me, her eyes closed as though she'd fallen asleep. My mind was in turmoil, and I couldn't stop worrying about what might be wrong. The results came back. and we handed them to the doctor. He studied the lab report, adjusted his glasses, and looked up at us. "The test results are fine," the doctor said. I sighed in relief, but then the doctor asked, "When was your last period?" Willow froze for a moment, instinctively giving a date. Then, she stiffened, her eyes slowly widening as if she'd realized something impossible, and her fingers clenched the fabric of her shirt. My heart dropped. A vague thought flitted through my mind, and I was left momentarily stunned. The doctor nodded, then quickly wrote out another referral. "You should go to the obstetrics and gynecology department for an HCG test." The rest of the process seemed foggy, as though I were in a dream. I was dizzy, paying the fees, accompanying her for the blood test, then waiting outside the gynecology office. We didn't speak, and the air between us was tense and charged. Willow kept her head down, her fingers turning white from gripping tightly. I reached out and took her cold hand, realizing she was trembling badly. "Don't be scared," I heard my voice, rough and dry. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with panic, confusion, and a faint, almost imperceptible glimmer of hope she barely dared to believe. The gynecologist took a look at the new test results and smiled. "Congratulations, you're pregnant." "About 5 weeks." The words exploded in my mind like fireworks, and the world seemed to go silent with a loud ringing in my ears. The only thing I could hear was my heart racing, pounding in my chest with such intensity that it hurt my eardrums. I turned sharply to look at Willow. She was completely frozen, her face pale, her lips trembling, and tears suddenly streaming down her face, large drops falling onto the back of her hand that she had clenched tightly. "Really?" Her voice was shaky, almost as if she feared this might be a dream. "But I've been on medication for so long." She was incoherent, her panic overshadowing her joy. The doctor explained gently, "Based on the timeline, it seems like you got pregnant after completely stopping the medication. As of now, the indicators are fine. Just come for regular checkups and keep an eye on things. Don't worry too much." When we left the doctor's office, Willow was still in shock, walking with a dazed, almost floating step. I held onto her shoulder tightly, afraid she might stumble. In the car, she kept crying, but it wasn't sadness, it was overwhelming excitement and uncertainty, something she couldn't quite bear. "George." She grabbed my arm, her fingers tightening until they were white. "What do I do? I'm scared." I cupped her cold hand fully in mine, bringing it to my lips to warm it up, then gently rubbed it. "What are you scared of?" I looked into her eyes, my voice unusually firm. "I'm here. Didn't the doctor say? Regular checkups. Everything's going to be fine." She looked at me, her tears flowing more heavily, but slowly. She nodded, resting her head against my chest, burying her face in my neck. Her warm tears soaked into my skin. That night, neither of us really slept. She lay in my arms, her hand resting gently on her still flat stomach, her eyes sparkling. Every now and then, she'd ask, "Is this real, George? I'm not dreaming, am I?" "It's not a dream," I answered again and again, kissing her forehead. "It's real." The next day, I took the first opportunity to take leave from work and dragged her out to buy the largest non-slip mats I could find, covering every corner of the house. I also bought a pile of pregnancy and childbirth books, stacking them by the bed. She watched me hustle around, a bit amused and a bit teary-eyed. "You're overdoing it." "I'm not overdoing it at all," I said seriously. "From today, you're the most protected person in this family." She smiled, but her eyes turned red again. On the weekend, we went back to my parents' house. During dinner, I cleared my throat and announced the news. My mom, in the middle of picking up some food, froze. The pork rib on her chopsticks fell back onto the plate with a clink. My dad, holding his wine glass, was stunned as well. 2 seconds later, my mom jumped up with a loud "ah" and rushed over to hug Willow, her voice breaking into a cry. "Oh my God, really? Oh Willow, that's wonderful, so wonderful." She spoke incoherently, holding Willow tight, laughing and crying at the same time. My dad put his wine glass down, his hands shaking, and slapped me hard on the shoulder, his eyes watering. "Good job, son, good." After the excitement died down, my mom looked at Willow, suddenly remembering something. Her expression became cautious. "So, you too, the baby?" I knew what she was asking. Willow and I exchanged a glance. Her face was still flushed, but her gaze was steady and calm. She nodded slightly. I took a deep breath, pulled 2 bright red marriage certificates out of my pocket, and placed them on the table. "Mom, Dad." I tightened my grip on Willow's hand, my voice quiet but each word clear and strong. "We're remarried. We just got our license yesterday afternoon." The house went completely silent. You could even hear a pin drop. My mom stared at the 2 red books, then at our intertwined hands. Her mouth moved, but no sound came out. Tears instantly flooded her eyes. She wiped her tears with one hand, laughing through the tears, and then buried her face in my dad's shoulder, crying so much she couldn't say a word. My dad wrapped his arms around my mom, his eyes wet with tears, looking at us both. He nodded firmly, a deep sense of relief in his expression. Good, good. It's good to have you back. A family. We're a family again. On the way home, the sunset painted the sky a warm orange. Willow leaned against the passenger seat, holding the 2 brand new marriage certificates, flipping through them over and over. A soft, gentle smile never left her lips. At a red light, I leaned over and kissed her cheek. She turned to look at me, her eyes sparkling with tiny, scattered lights, like they were filled with stars. Mr. Wang, she smiled, her voice light and playful. I look forward to your guidance from now on. I held her hand, pressing it gently to her still flat stomach. Likewise, Mrs. Wang. Later, we briefly talked about her parents. Her father, I heard, had run up another huge debt and disappeared into some corner, hiding from his creditors. He hadn't dared to contact her again. I sent David another generous red envelope. As for her mother, she still quietly resided in the nursing home, her condition fluctuating between better and worse. Willow occasionally went to visit her, bringing a bouquet of flowers, sitting with her for a while. Most of the time, her mother couldn't recognize her, but on rare occasions when she was lucid, she would take Willow's hand and offer a faint smile. Willow said that was enough. Some wounds could never fully heal, but they no longer bled, becoming a part of life, reminders of the path she'd walked, helping her cherish the light she had now. The car merged into the evening rush hour traffic, and ahead of us, our home stood brightly lit.